Hello.
Where are you this time, Wayne?
I'm in Bahia.
Uh-huh. I like the old lights.
Yeah. And the old buildings.
Also,
Ay, 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 ay.
hello, everyone.
Hello. Ebenezer,
Yes,
I was doing some research. I help to maintain the Zoom with my synagogue, and I was looking into the settings of my synagogue's Zoom account, and I realized that there's a menu where you can go in and control the chat feature, and you can turn when you're in a webinar. You can't do it once you're in the meeting, but you can set the controls when you're not in a meeting, change the defaults so that when you're in a webinar, you can still enable chat between the panelists. That is an option. You have to really scroll down. It took me, I was on the site for like a half an hour. I learned a lot. But there is, as it turns out, there is a way to toggle the settings on Zoom so that when we are in a webinar situation, we have the ability not only to have the Q&A from the public, but we can also chat amongst ourselves so that we're not like texting each other, asking things like, what time is that meeting? And are you going to make the announcement about such and such and whatever?
okay, we're going to look into that. Thank you for that information. Last month, the Board of Service Cabinet meeting, we discussed that, and it was said that the webinar doesn't have that feature. But you said that you have it at the bottom. We're going to look into that. Going to look with Paola and Janelle to see what can we do.
I'm happy during, like not during a Zoom call, but I'm happy to have a Zoom call with the office staff and we can pull up the actual settings and I can show them where the menu is, either through shared screen or, you know, whatever works for you.
That's wonderful. We can coordinate with that.
Okay, so it's 6:30. So we're gonna call the meeting to order. Ozzy, do we have quorum?
Hold on a second. We have 12 members, yes.
So we do have quorum
Yeah.
for the executive committee. So, and again, Caesar was already promoted. So hi, each and every one of you guys who took their time to come and enjoy ourselves and enjoy the discussions and enjoy the space. Hopefully we can have a productive conversation. I know that we are in extremely busy lives, and sometimes we take for granted the fact that this is voluntary and that we are all making the sacrifices to be here. With that, I'll start by thanking the office of Carmen De La Rosa, our assemblywoman, for the invitation for the event that she had a couple of days ago at the corner of Isham and Broadway, the Uptown Solidarity for All. It was a vigil for the lives that we've lost and for those that has been injured in the past couple of days. It comes to my mind the fact that the last two folks who have had episodes of mental health breakdown that it turned out in deaths of that event, of that sort, have been Latino men, both from Dominican descent. And with that, I'd like to say that, you know, mental health is amongst us. It's touching our doors, and is really affecting our day-to-day life and the quality of life. sometimes we over-focus on a liquor license here and a liquor license there. And then we turn that into the only quality of life issue that we are experiencing, that we have much more than that. I think that Ariel, in your role as a person who chairs a health committee, have a big tax on hand as to exactly try and focus into how do we bring more mental health services into our community. So I just wanted to say thank you to the Office of Carmen de la Rosa, and also stress the fact of what we're dealing with. Also like to commend and say, congratulate Domingo on his cannabis meeting that he had, inviting different members of our community to bring them up to speed into an industry that is going to be significant within the next 10 to 20 years. The attendance was incredible, about 150 people counting between Zoom and YouTube. And that was outstanding considering our average per committee that we have. So I'm assuming that you did a hell of a outreach. That is commendable. Also, I'd like to bring forth an extremely good initiative that and I'd like to say Faye and Domingo are doing by collaborating and allowing people from their committees to run their meetings. And that's how you make leadership. You know, that's how you bring forth, leaders, and that's how you build them. You have to give them the chance and the opportunity to feel like they're part of it, number one, and also that they're exposed to the decision making of being a chair, so that when we grow as a board, you have those individuals that have already been baptized by fire. So that initiative is something that we should all continue to undertake. There will be changes in the sense that we need to bring leaders into this setting, into the executive committee, into the committee chairs, because we need to have voices that really represent not just our voices and our personal or whatever agendas that we may have or may not have, but we need to have people that will represent a bigger plurality, people that will, in essence, represent much more than ourselves. Having said that, I will now ask any questions. Yeah, please.
I have a question about the health committee. Is Steve no longer the chair of the health committee?
I meant to say housing. Thank you for
Got
the
it.
correction.
Thank you.
Righty. Ebenezer.
Quick question, Eleazar.
Yes, sir.
For tonight's exec meeting, do we have anyone from our, city council reps or city planning talking to us about that citywide planning initiative?
No, I did speak to our city council, and they are working on having, as you and I talked about, getting a person to represent us and give us a briefing on that matter.
So, but at this juncture,
The answer is they're not here, but
yeah, we don't have anyone, and the borough president's office said they haven't taken. So just so everyone knows, this is another instance where, we're getting the information kind of late. There's a public hearing the same day as our general meeting. And of course, the public hearing's in the morning. The general meeting is at, 6:30 or 7. And this is concerning, city planning's initiative or the mayor's office initiative to have a sort of a citywide comprehensive plan. And, the 23rd is every community board, every members of the public opportunity to provide comments on it. So at this juncture, we're not doing really well schedule-wise.
figure that we'll have something going by then. Thank you, Wayne, for bringing that up. Ebenezer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Always a pleasure being here as your district manager.
I'm sorry, can I have a point of order?
After the report. Go ahead, Ebenezer.
I have a point of order.
Jim?
If
And
she
I have a
has it,
right to bring forth a
state
point
your
of
point
order.
of order, please.
Thank you. My point of order is that we ask for the approval of the agenda before we dived into it,
Thank you, Tanya.
because I don't remember hearing that question. So,
This is not the general meeting where the agenda is approved. This is the
No,
executive.
we should actually approve all agendas. So let's approve the agenda. I don't hear anyone objecting.
and
So
I make a motion to add the following 2 items to the agenda. One is the inclusion resolution that has been stalled since last February.
Second,
To discuss that. Thank you. And I would also like to add a second agenda item just to make probably a monthly check-in with all of our task forces, to add that to the agenda tonight so we can
Second.
keep up. And
we now have to vote on whether the group has to vote on whether it wants to accept these amendments to the agenda. They were seconded.
I have a question. Who seconded them? Was it
I
Liz?
did, that was me, sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, I had my video off because I was eating
Yeah,
dinner.
so, Mr. Chair, I don't believe, ask if anyone has an objection to these amendments.
Does anyone have any objections to these rapid and quick amendments?
I have a clarifying question.
Sure.
By checking on the task force, do you mean outside of like monthly reports or like what's, yeah?
yes, the monthly reports on the task forces would be, not every task force is reporting every month. Some are, because by nature, the people show up here, but there are task forces that we don't have updates on, and just to keep things consistent and fair, like there would be a report. There's a check-in to hold ourselves accountable, to make sure that we are moving these initiatives forward, and that things are held accountable, that we just have a report via all of the task forces every month as part of the executive committee.
Okay, so can you move on, Jim?
Well, no, if there's no objection, the amendment, the agenda is now amended and these 2 items are on it.
All right, so Ebenezer?
Well, now we have to vote on the amended agenda or see if there's any objection to it.
But
There was no objection.
There's no objection, so why vote on it? What are you talking
There
about?
was
So
no
there's no-
objection.
Well, there
What are
were
you
no
talking about?
objections to the amendments and there was no objection to the original agenda. Therefore, we can infer that there would be no objection to the amended agenda. So we can move on without that troublesome vote. Thank you.
Ebenezer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Always it's a pleasure being here as your district manager, giving my monthly report. Not too much to report, just an update. Last month, we said we're gonna be acquiring a second Zoom account for the office. We're still in the process of doing that. It should be completed by this week before February is over. Thank you. This is the end of my report. God bless.
Hey, thank you. Omar, wishing you the best, man. This is your report. I've been there,
Yes.
brother. I've been there.
Thank you. Just before I start my report, as I let Eli know, and Ebenezer, and Catherine, Tanya, OC, and Jim, as well as the committees that I'm both a part of with Wayne and Debbie, is that I will be out for the next 2 months. I was diagnosed with a congenital heart disease with an anomalous coronary artery that's going to require immediate surgery. So I will be having heart surgery on March 4th, and I'll be missing the next 2 months. So it's, as I said in the email, it's an unfortunate but fortunate news, because it was caught early enough for us to do something about it. And I'm still here to talk about it, which is the good part. So letting everybody know, I'll be out for the next 2 months. Jim, great seeing you up in Cabrini. On Saturday, I was walking with my wife, and that was a great surprise. And yeah, just letting everybody know that that's, what's happening now. So I'll be out for the next 2 months. And hopefully my goal is to come back better and stronger at the beginning of May, immediately. That's my goal. But the doctor said, don't rush it either. So with that said, I have the treasurer's report. I know I shared this with the office. So if the office has a moment, they can share that report with everyone so they can have it now, hopefully. And as of last month's treasury report and this month's treasury report, there hasn't been any change in terms of liquidations or expenses. So we're going to be looking at kind of like the same figures that we had last month. The only difference this month is the budget cut that we spoke about last month, that the city's actually put it into the system now. And that's a reduction in our budget of about $3,629. It doesn't change our forecast for the year. We had already accounted for it in the last report. So we're still forecasting around $10,000 in surplus for the year. Right now it's sitting at 13,000, but we expect some expenses, some normal expenses that occur year in and year out to occur, and we should sit around 10,000. Doesn't change much of what we did last month in our reporting. That money is still there, that the board can decide if there's an initiative that they want to do, they can voice that need. I know last month we spoke about possibly procuring PPE items. I'm just the treasurer. I can't make that decision. The board makes that decision, as well as in combination with Ebenezer and our procurement policies. But just putting it out there. And that really is it. There hasn't been change. There hasn't been movement in expenses. So we're holding steady at about a $10,000 surplus projection that the board can decide if there's any projects that they would like to work on. And with that said, thank you, everyone. I hope to be back in May with my next treasurer's report.
I hope everything comes out well, Omar.
Yeah.
The best in surgery.
I've been through the same thing you're going through, and I think what was going to help you is to really, really get the hell away for a minute.
Thank you.
You're not going to be able to sustain it and get healthy if you have to endure a lot of the nuances of the everyday life. But I wish you the best, man. You're going to be good. I know.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
I appreciate everyone.
Ozzy, next.
Yeah,
There
okay.
are some questions in the chat directed to, in the Q&A.
Catherine, are you looking at the questions?
I got it. Omar, there's a question about the budget be distributed to the full board, please.
Yeah, I have no problem. It was given to our central office. So when they have a moment, they can distribute that to the full board. No problem.
Thank you.
Hope that answers that question. And Sally, thank you for the DLHMH comment that you can provide PPE free to the board. So that will free up funding for other needs for the board. And Aisha, thank you for your wishes as well. Appreciate it.
All right, Omar. Ozzy, this is your chance.
Yeah. Something, I don't know, if somebody add Elizabeth name to my name, OC Commoner Elizabeth Secretary.
Huh?
Wasn't me, yeah. If you look at my name, you'll see it. Okay, so I have just want to report on the information that I was able to gather so far. So Francisco Alvarez was absent and I'm talking about from January 20 until December 2020. He was not in 22 meetings altogether, meaning general meetings, and he's assigned committees. Glennis was excused in 5 meetings and was absent in 2. And other than those 2, so far, Robin Cruz was excused in 5 meetings, and Waldis Cruz was excused in 3 but absent in 2, so he was not in for total 5 meetings. And Naisha was excused for 5 meetings and was absent in 4 for a total 9 meetings in 2020. That's the information that I have so far. I will have hopefully the rest of them complete for the next meeting. I'm looking at the general meetings and the assigned committees for each member. So I think we should, Eli, actually, we spoke about it 2 months ago about Francisco Alvarez. And if I remember correctly, you were to call him and speak to him. Was that the case?
He sent a letter with his resignation.
Uh-huh.
It was sent to the office, and it was sent to the MBPL's office.
Okay, I didn't know about that. So
Yeah, I didn't even contact him, so you know, he just sent out the letter. I didn't have the chance to contact him.
Okay, no, that's fine. It's just that I didn't know about it and I was talking about it and nobody says anything. Okay, so okay, all right.
And I got 2 letters. I got one from Richie's. She had surgery recently and she had to step down from the board.
Christina?
Yeah, she's in my committee.
Okay.
So, an emergency surgery conducted and she had to step out the board. And one from, I believe, is Leo
Jimenez?
Is it the guy in my committee that worked for SBS? I believe is Leo.
Oh, Juan Guzman.
Juan Guzman, yeah. I got 2 emails. Juan Guzman is just overwhelmed with work so he actually is not able to.
So did he resign to the board president?
He CC'd all of us an email. They both did.
We all got it.
I don't remember getting anything. I will recheck my emails.
Yes, please.
All right, so Juan Guzman is, okay. All right. Okay, that's what I have so far.
You want me to forward it to you, Ozzy?
If you don't mind, that will be great. Thank you.
Thank you, amigo.
So that's my report so far.
Thank you, Ozzy. Thank you so much for all the hard work you do. Moving along, we are going to review the calendar March, what is it? April, May 2021. March, April 2021.
We don't have May's calendar.
Just March. I have Marches and April.
Right, but we did March last month.
So have April, and we didn't get May, did we?
No, we didn't say
Just
May.
March and April.
Yeah, we
March
have
and April.
Because we made some changes to March. I made the changes. I'll
Okay.
submit it again. And also to plan for April.
Have a shot of reviewing them again and see if there's anything that you guys want to change as far as the time and so forth. This is a good time.
Is it possible to share March calendar on the screen since there are some changes, Eli?
I don't have access to screen splitting, but maybe Paola can. She has it. I don't know if she's still around. I can do this.
1 second, hold on. I'll let you share.
I can share my screen. Any changes?
Try now, Eileen.
Huh?
So do you have the calendar to share?
No, I can't. I don't have hosting abilities to share it.
No, try now. I just gave you.
Everybody has sharing abilities to share, and the calendar was emailed this afternoon.
Okay, so everyone has it. You can grab it. There you go. Ebenezer, Isidro, you want to talk about what changes you proposed, whether they were made or not?
No, I was just not aware of some changes, but on licensing, we are good with the time. So there are no problems with licensing.
I think there was someone else who wanted to go from 7 to 6:30. Forget who it was.
I think that was health and environment.
It was health and environment.
I said, I think that it was health and environment.
Yeah, it's right there, 6:30 on Thursday the 4th. Okay. Vanessa, you want to share April since it seems like March is good? Okay, April. Any time changes, any dates, conflicts, anything that you guys feel like you should want to change?
When is Easter falling this year?
I don't celebrate.
On the 4th.
Easter is the Sunday in Passover, and Passover is March 27th, so it's after that.
The
So I think-
4th. Good Friday gonna be on the 2nd, and Easter gonna be on the 4th.
Yeah.
Anybody else who has any religious observances that they would like to have us considered, regardless of faith or anything?
Well, since tonight's Mardi Gras, should we all get drunk on this meeting?
Absolutely. I've got
So
vodka
we're
in the
good.
freezer.
So we're good. So no changes for April, so we're good.
Where are my beads?
Thank you, Ebenezer. With that, moving along to our committee chairs reports. Favorite part of the evening. Mary?
Oops. Not used to being first. Okay. We had a lengthy but very, very, very detailed and informative presentation by Dr. Stephen Chang from Columbia about the vaccines. And when you get my minutes, which will be forthcoming shortly in the next couple of days, please read them because everything is very detailed in the minutes. If anybody wants the PowerPoint, please let me know. I can send it to you. Our next meeting in March, there will be two presentations. One will be the Words Filers social work wait a minute, hold on. Care Cafe. Couldn't say it right. And they're going to present about that. And also in March will be a presentation on the ranked choice voting by Juan Rosa. So please attend the meeting if you can. I will get the agenda out as well. Thank you. That's it. And good luck, Omar.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary. Mr. Wayne Benjamin.
Thank you, Eleazar. For this month's Land Use Committee meeting, we had two presentations, two conversations. One was pertaining to the equity framework that the Landmarks Preservation Commission released towards the end of last month. What is interesting is, as you will recall, the Land Use Committee passed and the board passed a resolution asking for LPC to, give more attention to equity and inclusion in, their deliberations on what should, what merits designation. And, the release of their equity framework, dovetail nicely, with that timing, but we wanted to understand what it really meant. So we had a conversation with representatives from HDC and the Landmarks Conservancy because no one from LPC was available or willing to join land use in that discussion. But we did outline just a few questions for Ebenezer to follow up with the commission on basically how do they intend to measure the success of this framework, and how does each component of the framework contribute to equity and inclusion. I would also point out that Ebenezer was contacted by LPC soon after the community board resolution was forwarded to LPC, asking for a conversation, which is something we've been asking them for at least half a dozen years. Once again, the timing is interesting. We also discussed the Department of City Planning's citywide hotel text amendment. You may recall in 2018, there was a similar text amendment that was focused only on M1 districts. This expands that requirement, so there is a special permit that is required in a host of zoning districts. So the hotels are not permitted as of right. They have to undergo a ULURP and more detailed review. And the whole idea is to avoid having hotel development conflict with existing uses in manufacturing and commercial districts, but also to allow the city to gauge whether or not new hotel developments would help or hurt plans for other developments such as affordable housing. And there is a resolution that the committee will present to the full board commenting on that text amendment at the general meeting.
Would that be the end of your report?
Yeah, well, let me just also say that, going back to my comments during Eleazar's report, there are a number of initiatives that the board, or rather the land use committee, is getting late notice on. The hotel text amendment was one of them, but we were able to review that, get a presentation, and get comments in to city planning, or we will, because their review time is being extended. There is also an initiative underway to initiate or a requirement for a citywide comprehensive plan. And there is a public hearing on that on the 23rd. I believe the information was released to all community boards in late December. I only heard about it when city planning contacted me in the last couple of weeks to see what comments we would have. And the game plan was try to get someone from our 2 city council reps to come to us tonight to give us an update on what some of the thinking on that, as well as the borough president's office. We have no one talking about that. So what we will be able to say as a community board on this matter, by the 23rd, I don't know. And that is problematic. And what is problematic is when information is sent to the office, if committees don't get it in a timely manner, it really adversely impacts our ability to have intelligent conversations about it and to bring things before the board for consideration.
Floor is open for any questions that anyone may have.
I have a question. Wayne, this isn't new, right? In terms of all the last minute.
Unfortunately not, no.
Yeah, and so I know in the past, I think what was it, last month or the month prior, that we did a resolution around the commenting period. And I'm just curious if there's a way that, I don't know if the borough board has done that together, or if we've done joint letters of support, resolutions, sorry.
Yeah, well, we've passed a resolution to that effect. And interestingly enough, one of our comments in the resolution concerning the hotel zoning is similar to that, but that's not where the problem lies. The hotel zoning text amendment, and I saw it was sent to the office in December. That email was forwarded to me, but it was never forwarded to me or to anyone else on the committee. And the only reason I found out about it is, once again, our city planning rep said, "Do you guys have anything to say about it?" So it's a matter of when information is sent to the office, it absolutely positively has to get forwarded to the respective, committee chair or the committee, so that we know to put it on the agenda. Now, in both cases, fault lies on both sides, because why in the world would you release anything for comment just before Christmas? And I think both of these were released on the 18th, the 21st of December. And I pointed that out to the folks at City Planning. Having said that, even if it was sent to us a week later, we would have received it. It was never sent to us by the office. That's the problem.
Okay. Thank you. And thanks for
Thanks.
clarifying that.
All righty. Thank you for your questions, Catherine, and your answers, Wayne.
But the point is, Eliezer, we need to do something about it because it's becoming a pattern.
Yes, on it. Debbie?
Sorry, should I go now, or I thought Steve Simon was going?
I don't see Steve. Yeah, Steve is there. Yeah, I see Steve. Yeah, Steve, sorry.
All right. Latest statistics from the Department of Health show again that zip code 40 has an elevated positivity rate, close to 10%, 9.86%, 146 cases last week. Zip code 34 was next in line at 7.02%, 100 cases. Further down on the list is zip code 33, 6.65%, 122 new cases. And zip code 32 is further down on the list at 5.35%, 127 new cases. So our community had 495 new cases last week. We've had a total of close to 14,000 cases since the beginning of the COVID crisis, and we've had 562 deaths. Our vaccination rate at this point for adults in our community is at roughly 7% of our adults have been partially vaccinated, and maybe around 6% have been fully vaccinated. I got my second dose last week, and I have to tell you, it took me 2 or 3 days to rebound after getting that dose. Had chills, was extremely tired for several days. It really knocked me for a loop. So what they've been saying about the side effects of the second dose is absolutely true. The state, as you probably heard, issued revised statistics on nursing home deaths, and included is now reporting on the number of nursing home residents who died outside of the nursing homes at hospitals. And as a result, there are now 34 more residents at Isabella who are now listed as having died as a result of COVID-19, for a total, when you include the confirmed and presumed deaths that were previously reported, 102 total deaths at Isabella. And at Fort Tryon Nursing Home, there were no additional deaths reported as a result of this revised reporting, but they previously had 20 deaths. We had a very long discussion at my last meeting about the vaccination site being sponsored by the New York Presbyterian Hospital at the Fort Washington Armory. They promised that within a week or so, a new bilingual call line would be established to be run by one of our CBOs in order to try to reach out more to local residents and make it easier for them to get appointments. The last time I checked, late last week, the appointments to this were only being given out to local zip codes, only to people in the South Bronx and Northern Manhattan. As of the time of my meeting, which was February the 4th, the hospital reported that it had vaccinated over 30,000 people, that it was averaging about 2,000 a day, that 8,000 to 9,000 of those people came to them through CBOs, that they were using CBOs to senior centers and others to reach out into the community and help encourage people to get the vaccinations. They are still refusing to provide us with specific statistics on the number of COVID patients who have been admitted, treated, discharged from the 3 facilities in Washington Heights Inwood. They're only providing statistics for the entire New York Presbyterian Hospital System, which, as you know, includes facilities outside of our community in Westchester, Queens, elsewhere. This is, to me, not very responsive to the community board, not very keeping in being transparent and providing us with information that would be useful to our board. And also, to my distress, they are still refusing to provide a commitment that when COVID-19 dissipates, that they will restore the psych unit to the Allen Hospital. The other thing that came out in my meeting after I questioned them about it is that the plan to put up a new building on Broadway between 169th Street and 170th Street is now on the back burner, and there's no particular time frame for when something may happen there. We also had a presentation, among others, from the Emma Bowen Community Service Center, also known as the Upper Manhattan Mental Health Center. They requested a resolution in support of applications they are submitting to the federal government for a couple of grants to expand mental health and substance abuse programs, which will include people in our communities. And we voted to support those grant applications. So we will be presenting a resolution to that effect at the full board meeting. That's my report.
Hi, Steve, quick. Which vaccine did you take?
What is that?
Which vaccine did you take?
Pfizer.
Pfizer. Okay. I have two questions on the deck. I guess one is Liz, and the second one is who?
Debbie.
Debbie. All right.
There's also a third question from Sally, but so Steve.
This is the executive committee. She can put it on, post it on the Q&A.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, that whole block that the hospital owns of small businesses that got kicked out of their businesses and that were serving the community and are now it's all just vacant and they're doing nothing with it?
That's correct.
I'm going to ask a rhetorical question. I don't expect an answer, and maybe it's more of an issue for business development than for health, but holy mackerel.
Okay.
Well, like what do we do to keep landlords from sticking it to our small businesses in our community in this way? That's spectacular, not in a good way. I see Domingo shaking his head, so I know you're with me.
Well, listen, I never quite understood why Remy Restaurant had to be evicted when it was. I don't know why the apartment building on 169th Street had to be vacated years before they had any plan for the property, for the block. So to me, I can sort of understand the fact that COVID-19 has disrupted all of their plans and has stopped them in their tracks from proceeding with this project. To me, the two things I just mentioned are really unjustifiable. Remy could have stayed in business for at least another year and a half, and those people could have continued living in that building for several years. And both of those actions by the hospital, I believe, were not proper.
Okay, Debbie?
I just wanted to say, I mean, as people may, but I'm not sure that they know, just speaking from my job life, Congressman Espaillat's office has been active for the past, I think it's been like 12 days in doing outreach to seniors in the community and seeing if they need help making vaccine appointments, because for people who needed to access appointment making by phone rather than by computer, it was near impossible. And so we've served hundreds of people in getting appointments set up. And I will say, just as we're all coming to contact in different ways throughout the community, that one thing that's coming up, we've been hearing from New York Presbyterian is that it's just for those over 65, but they're working on the strategy of how they might deal with, but they have no announcement yet on people who as of yesterday were eligible due to medical condition, immunosuppression, et cetera. And so as far as I know, that hasn't been announced yet, but that is really meaningful for our community because as everybody knows, the Armory is the big site and really one of the only things uptown. And that, again, as a reminder that drugstores, you may have seen drugstores are starting to give vaccines, but like the Armory site, that's just for people over 65. So people that have the underlying medical condition or a job-related ability to get a vaccine, they cannot be served at the drugstores or the New York Presbyterian. So I think we all need to be, keeping our ears open because this is a big thing with the community is all these people that have underlying conditions and haven't been able to get through with an appointment, maybe at Javits, et cetera, that are sort of waiting with bated breath as to what's going to happen with the Armory site.
All right, thanks. Domingo, Ozzy, Ariel. That'll be 5 questions for this particular.
Yeah, so back to and I agree with Liz. I sat down once in a committee meeting where I was in Wayne's committee and the hospital was we need check and balances. Like we can't just pick and choose our battles. The hospital is continuously pushing and pushing and pushing. And every time they come, we depend solely on the voices of their lobbyists, their staff. Like we really need to provide check and balances because it's gotten to a point now where we do whatever we want and we get rubber stamped in the community board. And thank you for raising that, Liz. Now on my other hat, and I think Steve did a great job facilitating this conversation because it was an uncomfortable conversation because these individuals went in there thinking that whatever they were going to bring to the table, and most of them left early, which is very important to know. Most of them just left early and they left one person to answer all the questions. As somebody who's referred over 250 people at this point to get vaccinated, Somo's process in Yankee Stadium is so much more seamless than what we're seeing in the Armory. And I think it's very important to know that we do have to hold individuals accountable because it's a damn shame that you've been in this community for this long and you still don't know how to get it right. And I think
All right, thank you, Domingo. Ozzy?
Yeah, it's probably a somewhat continuation from what Domingo was saying. Steve, did you get information about how many people got vaccinated at the Armory before they were put to shame for allowing people not from our community to get vaccinated at the Armory? And if you didn't, I just want to, I hope you asked them to do that because that was my question at the meeting. And I don't know how to get the information from them, but I think we are entitled to get that. And also would like to know how many people are getting vaccinated right now. I'm assuming all, if not most, if not all the people getting vaccinated at the Armory right now are from the Washington Heights Inwood.
Well, no, it's it goes beyond the Washington Heights Inwood to include a number of zip codes in the Bronx and going into Harlem.
All right, can we get the information of like how many got vaccinated before they were put to shame? I'm talking about people that got vaccinated that were not from Washington Heights Inwood.
Well, actually, what I asked them for, and I don't.
I know what I asked, Steve, and I know I raised my voice. I know I raised my voice, and I'm not sorry about that. I think it's absolutely shameful for an organization that are being in the community for decades, not to offer that for Washington Heights and Inwood's resident first. That's just just really show what they're thinking of. They don't care about what's going on in the community they're supposed to serve. They don't.
See, that's just not true.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That is not true. And you can't make a vaccine. Everybody that's a New York City
out of order.
site.
Out of order. Completely out of order. Just no arguments. We're just trying to conduct a conversation in an argumentative ideas here. Steve, please.
If I could just, what I requested was a complete zip code breakdown of everybody who's been vaccinated at the Armory, and to get a regular weekly report so we know that the commitment they made to prioritize local residents is being carried out. I can't say that I'm very optimistic about getting that information because, as you can see, other information I've requested in the past, they've refused to provide. But I think it needs to be monitored. I agree that we need to hold their feet to the fire. We have to see that that the commitment they made to provide vaccinations to the people in Upper Manhattan and the Bronx, that it's being carried out. And actually, Debbie, I'd like to talk to Adriano about this because this is, I believe, a commitment they also made to him. And I think we need to see on a weekly basis who's actually being vaccinated, so we know that that the program that they agreed to is being carried out.
Okay, Ariel's been waiting for a while. Faye, and then we'll end it there.
Hi all. So I mean, I of course am understanding of many of these issues that everyone's bringing up, but I think by this point, the kind of concern that has not been raised as much is about the human services aspect of how NYP has been running things. If you cannot necessarily employ people that are from the community, specifically people that speak Spanish, which was actually the most outrageous thing that came up in those articles, that says something to how the company or the organization is running. In addition, you're also talking about the administration outside of NYP. What is DOH doing with NYP in collaboration with now all these smaller organizations, or rather I should say chain stores, such as Rite Aid and CVS that are now being administered throughout the city. Right now we have those five soft spots that just opened up. None of those are going towards any small mom and pop shops, which is a bit outrageous. You're talking about people's jobs again, still not being considered.
Is that a question?
What do you mean by soft spots?
So the new locations they've chosen, the 5 that are outside of the Armory, for everyone that's 65 and over, those are going towards Rite Aid and CVS.
Oh yeah.
None of those are going towards any of the small mom and pop pharmacies.
Yeah, that's correct. But
And at the end,
Faye?
it's not the state.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Yes, my question is, Steve.
Can I just, before you go on, Ariel, I'm gonna pick up on that question and talk to DOH, because they did promise me that other pharmacies were to be included in this plan.
Sorry, I don't want to steal Faye's thunder. I just wanted to clarify. There's one Steve, by the way, and I can email you both, Ariel and Steve, local small pop pharmacies to have it.
Well, I was on the, okay, thank you. But I want to follow up with DOH, because it was my understanding that it was going to go beyond the chain stores.
So, Steve, I'm thinking, and going back to OC comments, so wasn't this initiative supposed to be based on age group?
Yes. So at the moment, as far as I know, and I think Debbie said the same thing, the Armory at this point is only providing appointments to people 65 and over. I don't believe they've expanded the appointment base to include restaurant workers and I think and taxi and livery drivers. I don't think they've done that yet. I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to check on it today.
But one thing that I want to just, and this is a very last thing. So calculating the population of 65 and older in our community, and also taking note how many doses of this vaccination have been granted, we can do the math and take it from there. Thank you.
Well, they say, you know, that when at the meeting they said that they're looking at 350,000 seniors over 65 in their catchment area, which I assume means the various Bronx and Upper Manhattan zip codes.
American Survey has that information.
Okay.
That's true, yes.
Thank you. We're going to move along to the new chair's report from Deb and Abavian. Deb?
Okay, thank you. There were two presentations at the February TNT meeting, both by DOT. The first one was actually something I didn't know about, which was the initial, very early in the process presentation of the iconic 191st Street One Train Tunnel Rehabilitation Project. The end of the story is that the tunnel is getting some necessary rehab, but this begins a process that probably means construction beginning in 2025. So we've got a ways to go, and this was sort of just the very first presentation of what would be happening. So as I think anyone knows who's been through the tunnel, while there's a ramp there, it's like the opposite of ADA compliant. And so one of the primary drivers of the project would be to create an ADA compliant entryway. And then there's a lot of, as people also know, leaks and flooding and all that stuff in that tunnel. But the presentation that happened was sort of even before the design has happened. So they're just starting to like scope the project, and then the next step will be design, and they'll come back to us at various junctures. But this will more than likely be something that there will more than likely be a full shutdown of the tunnel for a period of time. They don't know for sure because again, it's quite early in the process. One thing that was interesting about it was that it's actually the low ceiling height when you enter the tunnel from Broadway. Even the ceiling height is out of compliance from an ADA standpoint, which is something I never thought about, like the sort of vertical distance. The next presentation was another presentation on the 181st Street Busway. As people know, because of prior presentations, this is something that we've had prior presentations on. I would say probably the biggest changes with this presentation, or the new things, not really changes over what was last presented, related to all sorts of curb regulations like parking, and them trying to create parking regulations that more align with the business's needs, the loading needs, and sort of the pattern that people are like, how long are they stopping in? So they're creating, besides trying to create some more meter spots, they're also trying to contend with the fact that so many people need to do things quick. So if you create an easy way for people to be able to pull over legally for a short period of time, and sort of a flexible way, that will be helpful. They're also extending loading zones for, I think, an hour then longer than normal. They also added the hours that this would be in operation. And as everybody knows, it knows 181st Street, it's not just a 9 to 5 kind of place. So it would be 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. is the proposal. So we heard on that, and that was really the high points, I would say. Next month, we hope to have both a discussion of bike infrastructure. It's something that's sort of come at us in probably at least 3 different ways. So I just wanted to sort of have one time where we could discuss it and hopefully get people from DOT there, as well as other interested parties, because people have come at us nibbling. And when we had the city bike presentation, it was sort of like one of the 2 biggest issues that came up, particularly for the area between 181st and Dykeman, anywhere between St. Nicholas and Fort Washington, where you're kind of left to the dangers of Broadway. And then also I'm hoping to get a Restoring the George presentation, because of course the 10-year-long project, or however long, with restoring the George Washington Bridge has such direct impacts to CB12 streets. That's it.
That's part of it. Now comes the easiest way, the easiest part, which is to answer questions. Hopefully we'll get questions related to your presentations. I don't know the order, but it seems to be Wayne, Domingo, and Mary. That way.
Yeah,
That order.
so concerning the ADA accessibility at the tunnel for 191st Street, I'm wondering what else is part of the planning for that, because the station itself isn't accessible. You can't get down to the trains. So making the entrance accessible achieves what? And the other question, sort of related to the loading and unloading, but not on 181st Street, coming back to what I reported on Riverside Drive, the unintended consequence of the median that was put in is the traffic noise, which neighbors are complaining to me about, and I'm sending those complaints to Ebenezer and to Eliezer. But I just want you to know, Debbie, that the issue that has arisen with cars either, or in particular buses, not being able to make the turn or taking longer to make the turn and thereby backing up the traffic and causing honking horns, is something that is now persistent and really needs to be addressed by DOT, since it's a problem it created.
Right, understood. And I have been noting the things that you have been sending by. I would say, in the first instance, as you know, I wanted to address the situation in front of the Grinnell. And as a second point, and this is sort of a newer thing.
Yeah, it's not a newer thing per se. It's what I pointed out is, obviously, and DOT speaks to this, there's a network of streets and they work together. And what has happened with what they've done on Riverside, it's impacting 157th, which is the route of the BX.
No, I understand that. I guess what I'm saying is that this issue has come up more recently than the loading zone issue. And so,
but my point is they're related.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
So
Domingo?
But in terms of accessibility at the tunnel and what that achieves.
Well, but at least it's a station you can get into. I mean, it's not like somebody has 2 flights of stairs if they can get in. And I think that it doesn't make it fully accessible, but I think
I guess the question, you could get into the station.
I think this is I'm sorry to cut you guys off.
Could I just comment on that as a long-term member of the committee? What the elevators do is they bring people from Broadway to St. Nicholas Avenue, whether they use the subway or not, and it's a vital amenity. Thank you.
Well, the question was, in terms of, is there part of a plan that would make getting to the trains accessible? And that's kind of a yes or no question.
Okay, so that's the question.
This is only tunnel.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Domingo.
So there was also another report, Deb. This was from Tony. He's a local businessman that really helps youth programming that usually happens on the east side. He was talking about the commercial buses and stuff like that parking on Amsterdam. Is that going to be addressed?
First of all, he didn't actually raise it during the meeting, but I am aware of the issue because I know he did write in about it. And yes, I think that I have contacted DOT about it. And it's actually, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think back now to, I think Isidro once raised this about, in a sort of slightly different fashion, about St. Nicholas near 181st Street. And then I've heard the same issue in another context further uptown. And then there was what Tony brought forward, and the thing of these commercial use and businesses' use of curb space. So yeah, I've started to look into it because it's actually like, you know, it's again, you're not supposed to do that. If it's a commercial usage, it's not like parking your personal car. And so it's got an enforcement aspect, but it's just unclear to me, like who's got what piece of it. So it's not really, I understand it's something happening on our streets, but like a lot of other things, it's ultimately something that's happening that can be, is not legal and like can be ticketed. So it's not necessarily like DOT can do anything, but anyway, but I've started with DOT.
Because I think, Debbie, like one of the most important things to note is as there's this huge traffic dilemma, it's also important to look at areas that are quick fixes. Like this is a heavily residential area, which is that Amsterdam Fort George curve. And it's an issue that could be like easier addressed than building a public parking lot, you know?
I don't know if I know what you're saying, but I don't think we need to hold my meeting at this. So, I mean, if you want to offline with me, I am sort of looking into it from a few angles. And, you know, I have an example of like car dealerships that are parking their inventory, right? Like you can't actually do that. So I've started the conversation with DOT. I haven't gotten feedback yet, but I imagine it's going to end up with an traffic enforcement conversation as well.
Thank you, Debbie. Mary?
I just wanted to raise something else that we've been talking about. Actually, it didn't come up. Well, I guess I don't know. I don't remember if it came up at the meeting or not, but this is something that actually involves more than just one committee. In front of the armory with the vaccine, with the vaccines being given out there's a whole traffic issue. It's like so congested there that even I saw a number 4 bus on Broadway this morning because of the fact that you can't get through there, through that area, you know, except unless you're gonna, you know, twiddle your thumbs and wait an hour to get through that area. But the other problem is the M4 bus, which is an issue because in front the area in front of the armory that's supposed to be the bus stop is now crowded with cars that are waiting, that are letting people off, et cetera, et cetera. It's never clear. Therefore, the bus cannot pull to the curb for the disabled passengers. Therefore, there is no bus, no accessible bus between 165th and 171st going uptown for any disabled, any people with disabilities. So, you know, that's a real issue. And then there's, you know, barriers in front of it. The snow was, you know, was another issue, and it's going to happen again. But we really need to have something done. It's a safety issue too. If you have to go out, if you get a wheelchair or a walker and you've got to go out in the middle of the street that's already congested, you've got cars, you know, blowing their horns at you. You're trying to get on the bus that's out in the middle of the road and trying to get on the ramp that's hardly ADA compliant because it's in the middle of the road. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
Right. As I said,
I have pictures of all kinds. You know, we've notified a bunch of people.
Yeah. But yeah, and as you know, I had a conversation with Sandra about it, and she had been there that day and sort of was dismayed and starting the process on their side. But I thought it had been a little better. It sounds like
it's a little better for a day or two, but it's today. I was over there today because I had therapy today, and went by there. It's the same thing all over, you know. So it's, and I'm over there like 3 days a week. So
Debbie, Sandra's not really directly involved with the operation at the armory. It's being run by the hospital, not Columbia itself. We need to talk to the hospital. We need to talk to the police.
We have. I've notified. I've talked to the NCOs.
Well, maybe Ebenezer can talk to the commanding officer. I mean, that sounds like a pretty, if the number 4 bus is being rerouted, that sounds like a pretty severe situation.
It was today. That's the first time I've seen that, but you know, I was certain it was because of traffic there. They can't get through.
I think this is going to entail more collaboration offline, so that we kind of like talk amongst ourselves. And,
Can't hear you.
yeah, so that we can. No, I'm saying that we're going to have to kind of like collaborate a little bit more amongst us as far as how it affected, seniors from taking the post number 4
Right.
one way, and then public safety Curtis and and Commander Bello and so forth. So I think that we're going to have that. We're going to have to probably start like an email thread or something, so we can really get more productive results from this. Does anyone else have any questions for Debbie?
And I have pictures if anybody needs them.
Good. So I'll start the email thread myself, Mary. Okay. I before I move on to man Curtis, I like to say, Steve, both you and Debbie, who probably deal with one of the 2 biggest agencies in New York City, for holding them accountable, and having these meetings and dealing with them, and making them feel like they're not just an extension of their office in your committees. I think that's extremely, extremely brave of you, especially what you did last week, Steve. I commend you for that. So, Curtis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to just start off by acknowledging and sending condolences to the families who lost loved ones at the subway stop at 207 this past weekend. Obviously, this is not only a housing and health issue and mental health issue, this is a public safety issue. And I was happy to receive the invitation to co-sponsor our committee as well as the board, obviously with the Assemblywoman at her visual she just hosted. It was great to see everyone come out to stand in solidarity. As you all know, the Public Safety Committee, I would say more than 3 of the resolutions we passed over the past year or 2 have all had a mention of the importance of mental health services for our community. So it's not just, as you mentioned, an issue for housing committee or health and human services committee, but it's also an issue for public safety, because we see the intersection of what happens when you don't provide mental health services or housing services, and how that then becomes a public safety issue. We've also passed resolutions making note that the solution is not to increase policing. So we want to make sure that we stand behind our resolutions and not call for 2,000 more police officers in our community, which ends in, we know what that results, what that leads to. So my condolences to the family. We're going to continue to do whatever we can to advocate for housing services and for mental health services in lieu of just increasing police presence. So with that being said, this week we have the FDNY is presenting tomorrow, actually. So we had our meeting earlier this month, and our second meeting is tomorrow. We have an education forum on fire safety. Obviously, fire safety is another issue in our community with so many older buildings. Most fires that happen in our community are preventable. So we are hoping to have some great information shared to the public tomorrow by FDNY. We have the top educators coming to present to the community. So thank you to Chanel, our liaison from the office, who shared that flyer out again today. Please do share it tomorrow to the community, and hopefully we'll have a maximum capacity. As for our agenda for the month of March, we've talked a lot about public safety and what it means to reimagine public safety. And there's a lot of information out there. People are saying more mental health services, more educational counselors, et cetera. So we're having a big forum March 3rd. So the first part of our meeting, the first 30 minutes, is going to be a traditional public safety update from our officers. And the second half of that meeting is going to be people presenting and talking about what it means to reimagine public safety. How does one invest in more mental health services? How do we transition to support education programming? And I've invited local organizers, Jackie Rowe Adams, who is a gun violence activist. I believe she lost 2 children to gun violence. So she's going to be on the panel. I invited Aisha Sekou from Street Corner Resources in Harlem. Haven't got a confirmation just yet. I also invited the public advocate, Jamani Williams, to come and present. The public advocate has a really progressive action plan. It's called a public education action plan to help educate the public on the intersections, not just talking about, police reform, but also talking about how we need to invest in education, housing, health, as a part of reimagining public safety. So I have to follow up with the public advocate's office tomorrow to ensure that they're able to come and give a holistic, conversation, have a holistic conversation about what it means to reimagine public safety. That's on our agenda for March. Our last meeting, it was a good meeting. A lot of issues currently, with burglaries and others. There's been a pattern of slashing, but they gave us an update on some of the pressing issues in our community, which I'll share more in our general body. We also have been tracking the issues of the slashings that have happened, not only at the 207 stop, but also in the lower heights at 157 to up to 160th Street. Thank you, Wayne, for sending over that information. I've received a lot of emails about that situation. The 33rd is being very responsive and very proactive. I occasionally will go out and just walk around the area just to see, if I see police cars, and I have noticed a stronger police presence just stationed at particular locations, mainly the problematic locations. So that's been a good thing to see. So if you're watching from the 3-4 and the 3-3, thank you for being proactive and being out there in the community. I think this is exactly what we need more of. Other than that, that's my entire report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Actually, no, you have 3 questions here.
3 already. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
you gotta go on. That order is gonna be Faye, Wayne, Steve.
Let's Steve go first, please.
Yeah, I think Steve was first.
Steve.
I have 2 questions. First of all, do you know whether the person arrested for the subway slashings and murders had any prior contact with the healthcare system? Or do we know whether or not he was ever hospitalized or given any treatment for his mental illness?
We do not know that, and that is information that they normally would not share with us about the personal attributes of a person who's been arrested, because obviously that, for obvious reasons. But so I don't know anything about the individual.
Well, usually stuff like this somehow gets into the press.
Yeah.
Well, it would be it might be enlightening to know that. Could you elaborate a bit about the reference you made earlier to there having been some slashings on Broadway north of 157th Street?
Yeah. So I guess the first email I received that Eli and I both received, as well as the office staff, Ebenezer, Paula, and Chanel came from Wayne, who mentioned that there's been residents in the lower parts of the Heights, 157 on up to 160th Broadway on over to the east side, had posted information about a pattern of slashing. Robberies. Okay, robberies, and there were some emails also about slashings as well. People being held up with a knife, and some of them were slashed, some of them were not, some of them were just threatened and robbed at night, and not at gunpoint, but at knife point. I guess that's the terminology I should use. And that is that. So there's been a coordination. There's been conversations between one of the NCOs who's been following up on those issues. It came from, like I said, our chairman of land use, Wayne, sent a message to me, as well as someone sent me a screenshot of someone who posted the same situation in the neighborhood app about their concern of this issue as well. So there's been at least 3 times I've received this communication from community members, and I have shared that with Deputy Inspector Bello for additional follow-up, and he's assured me that they're aware of it, and they've been following up, and they've been increasing their presence in the communities as well.
If you don't mind, could you also include me, Maria Luna, other people who live in that neighborhood on those emails?
Yes.
Thank you, Steve. I have 3 more questions. Wayne?
Yeah, and just for reference, the email that I received came from the Morris Jamel Neighborhood Association. And it was activity that's basically from 157th to 159th between Amsterdam and Broadway. That seems to be where it's focused. So they sent to a bunch of people, and I shared that with the community board. But Curtis, going back to the comments on subway safety, as we are reimagining or rethinking how we define public safety, I think we also need to remember that over the years, this community board has raised the issue of, public safety in, the MTA subway facilities. And when staff was being removed from booths, from elevators, we raised the issue, and the response from the MTA is the staff isn't there, for public safety. So I don't think it's a matter of saying we want mental health services in lieu of uniform services. We need to advocate for the proper balance of each.
Yes.
We've said in the past that public safety and uniform services is something that we want in the subway.
Yes. And I would add that I agree. I think there needs to be a good balance of both. And it can't be more of the other. And it seems like the solution has been from the top down has always been more of the other, where we get, let's just invest in more police officers. And we need to also think about mental health services as well. But yeah, so at the visual press, it wasn't a visual, I should say press conference / visual. People did make reference to, maybe we need to think about staffing at the train stops. And people have come to our meeting advocating for that as well. And the MTA has always said, well, we're not going to reinstall booths with agents at them if there are no agents at particular locations, because they kind of moved away from having agents there. We're not going to go back to that. And that's what they've said to us over and over again. But I do think now is the time to maybe advocate for some of those reinstilling staff at those locations, because even though they're not officers, even though they're not mental health providers, by their presence, it does cause people to be more, not to be as aggressive as they probably would be, knowing that no one's watching them.
All righty. Thank you for your answers. Faye, you gonna allow Tanya to go first, or you going now?
Yes, I can go now.
All right, and please make that announcement of the 34th precinct event that you were mentioning.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you. Curtis, yes, I wasn't sure about the announcement. I think it was an announcement that you made about March 3rd is going to be the educational conference, you said?
No, so tomorrow we have a panel from the fire education department. It's a fire education workshop. And they're going to be talking about fire education services and and how they can help prevent fires from happening in buildings.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I received that invitation. I'm certainly planning probably to attend there. Yes.
Okay, great.
So thank you, Curtis. Yes.
Thank you.
So yes, as for the 34, yes, on the 18th at 6 o'clock. Let me see if I can be correct. Yeah, at 6 o'clock, the 34 is going to have the how do you call? They're gonna have their community meeting. The coordinator meeting that they usually they put that together every 3 months, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be right at the Fort George. You know where the sport field is?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what it's going to be. So they already sent the flyer, and they expect the board hopefully to share with the community, so we can anyone that have questions and would like to join them. They welcome. Okay. So it's going to be this Thursday at 6 p.m.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing it. I will try to make it. I will add that one of the things that did happen at our meeting last month was that I kind of lost it a little bit, because I got a little bit irate with the 34th precinct, because and I would love for Ebenezer to help with this.
No.
But what happens is what's been happening over the last 6 months is that every meeting there's been a new officer from the 3-4 coming to our meeting, and it makes it very difficult for me to have a relationship with the 3-4. Like, I know Inspector Bello very well. I can text him, I can call him when there's an issue, but the 3-4, I don't have that relationship. So it's very difficult for me to know, and also I think it's just natural because I live in the 3-3, so this is my precinct, so it's easier for me to connect with them. But I find it to be counterproductive to not have the same person come to our meeting each month to present about what's happening in the 3-4. So I'm trying to work on that myself personally and build better relationship with 3-4. So I would make sure I try to come up here.
Yeah, it's a big ask.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Faye.
Please allow me. I made a boo-boo right now, and I do apologize because I'm confused. So the meeting that I just said is not going to be. It's the Build a Black meeting is going to be on Thursday, February the 25th at 1 p.m. Yes, okay. But the meeting that they have on Thursday, it's about community relationship, and it's a virtual meeting. That one I'm not announcing. But yes, it's the 25th.
Thank you.
The board will send the
okay, thank you, Faye. So we gotta move along. 0 o'clock. Tanya, last question on this presentation.
Okay, Curtis, thank you for your presentation. I had a question. I was curious about whether you had been told or any idea of the 500 police officers deployed as a result of these slashing of the killings. Do you know how many of those are being deployed in our community? Like, did you get any indication of that, of how many more additional police presence that we're looking at in this community? The other two things is a comment, and one is like, I think it's true. I think we need to, just like we did with domestic violence in the police departments, and understanding there needs to be some targeted work and emphasis on that within police departments, including units that deal with that. I think it's time for the same thing to happen with our with mental health, and that there needs to be a targeted, a way that there is a targeted focus within police departments to have people poised to deal with that and look into that. Third, I think, yes, it's great if we have mental health professionals and social workers, that could step into a lot of these roles, but it's important for us not to forget that even with that, it doesn't necessarily guarantee cultural competence. And I can say that as myself, having a master's degree in social work in Columbia, there's a lack of cultural competence amongst social workers and in their training coming up. And so those are just those comments I made. But the first question, just something you to take in. I know you're already there. You're nuanced. You get this shit. But I just want to know, like, the first question: do you know how many police officers were deployed?
So I do not know how many were deployed in our community exactly, but that's something I should know. So I would try to follow up with that. And just to comment very briefly, Mr. Chairman, to the comment that was made, there is a cultural competency issue in mental health. I work in this field as well. We do art therapy work, and I think there's a whole issue. But I also want to add that, mental health is so much bigger than just being confined to. People have been saying, well, we're living in a pandemic. People are losing their minds. But mental health, Black and brown people of color have been traumatized for hundreds of years. So a lot of the mental health issues are not just because of what's been happening over the last, year. It's been because of just, neglect and abuse and underfunding of schools and everything else that has, I guess, that led us to this point. So we have to acknowledge that this is an issue that is a long-standing issue in our community that hopefully we can all work together to solve. That concludes everything.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're gonna go on, move on with the next report, Liz Rader. Thank you, Curtis, again.
Thank you very much. I have already submitted my minutes and my 2 resolutions to the office, and they'll be sending that out when they send out the materials for our general meeting next week. I do want to let people know that at our last meeting, we had an interesting short presentation from Miguel Guadalupe from BHS, just to remind us of what Ariel has already told us, that they're having this series of conversations, listening sessions with the community to learn more about what the community's goals and needs are around the African-American, Native American slave burial grounds on 10th Avenue. There's 2 more sessions in that series. This Thursday, which will be bilingually, and then again next Saturday, the 27th. We had, Black history is American history, and that was very much what quite coincidentally drove our meeting earlier this month. We had an incredible presentation from Karen Ori, my counterpart on Board 10, around their almost 2 years of work in designing an installation in Central Park to honor the exonerated 5, and they are going around to all 11 other community boards in Manhattan to get either letters of support or resolutions of support. Not surprisingly, unanimously, we voted to write a resolution in support of that, and that will be sent to, for our consideration next week. We also had a presentation from our former board member, Karen Taylor, from While We Are Still Here, about her Harlem Heritage Markers project. We had a resolution that was like 16 years old that the board had passed about a similar project by a different group, which was never actually implemented. And we could have done a letter of support on the basis of that reso. But since there are only 3 people who were on the board then who are on the board now, we realized it probably made more sense to go with a resolution. So I've written that as well. Not surprisingly, it too passed unanimously through the committee. We had a report from my assistant chair who had the idea to go around the community and take a look at multiple potential naming opportunities within our local parks. As an outgrowth of our conversation around possibly renaming Bennett Park, there are many, many parks which could be named after not just for any number of people. We've had so many great suggestions from the community. So that's part of an ongoing conversation that we're having within our committee. I will be attending a Parks Department panel discussion next week on their efforts to honor Black history and their park renaming project. That's next Wednesday. And next Wednesday also, I will close with saying that there is a public scoping meeting at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom on the reconstruction renovation of the Dykeman Rest. That's that little wedge of the northernmost perimeter of Highbridge Park along Dykeman Street at Nagel Avenue, across from the Dykeman houses and adjacent to the 1 train. So very important for people to come to that, because it's through the public discussion that the Parks Department begins to understand what it is the community wants and can then design something that's responsive to community need. So all that information is in my minutes. And if there are no questions, then next up.
Thank you, Domingo.
Yeah, so on this month we had a great conversation. Like you previously stated, part of the new initiative is seeing how we could build new, like within the committees, to start showing them some of the task of what it means to be a chair, and to how to effectively put together a meeting and etc. So for that, I have Francisco Lopez, who was my co-chair this month. Is he allowed to speak or no? All right. So part of what we did was we just did outreach. We reached out to folks in the community, had a lot of people come back and just discuss, build alliances with other community boards who have done similar work. So again, it's not about necessarily reinventing the wheels, about seeing who's out there and actually being intentional about reaching out to individuals so that we could do some collaboration. So we had approximately 150 people. We had 117 via the Zoom registrations and 35 at the same time on YouTube. And I don't know what YouTube encompasses, Facebook and all of that. We had a conversation around cannabis. And the business of cannabis, and speaking as to like what the legacy. So cannabis is a very complex conversation. Is very deep rooted, being that there is a level of oppression in the past, you know, via the war on drugs and stuff like that. So we try to take it more from an angle of the business lens and basically address what is the market, what's out there, what are the current bills, what do these bills entail, but also most importantly, how could we have people who have been historically impacted by historically impacted by the war on drugs be able to be one of the people who got their first dibs on this marijuana industry, similar to prohibition, right? Once these industries open, it's important to know who are the people who actually who actually get the licenses. So we discussed that, and yeah, and it was a great turnout. It was a lot of folks from the community, a lot of great feedback. So yeah.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Domingo?
No, this is too controversial.
This seems, yeah. Okay. Next up, Faye. Oh, wait a minute. Curtis came out of the blue, out of left field.
I can't let you go like that, Domingo. What do you mean?
I know,
You know,
I know,
I-
we know.
I fir-
I know
I
it's
first-
gonna be a constructive question.
No, it was a compliment. I want to just thank you for bringing this issue up. It's very important. I'm looking forward to finding ways over the next few months to really focus our committee and maybe collaborating with your committee on the other element of it. As you mentioned, I think you called it equity piece. So making sure that whatever legislation that is going to be proposed at the assembly level, that we are helping to refine that and helping to make sure that we're getting the best deal as a community from that effort. So that's all I have to say. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation. March is not out the question for us, but maybe April.
Yeah, and of course, one thing Francisco has recommended is being able to create a series. So I think this is not necessarily any one committee, but we could develop the series of the intersectionality amongst the various committees. And like I said, you know, this is a topic that Francisco has led, and he's been very involved. So he could be the point person in our committee, and he'll let me know. He could be the point person in the committee to be able to further discuss cross committee series.
All right, so I guess Liz.
Yeah, I also think that, you know, this issue, like many issues, is certainly appropriate for other committees to be discussing. So, you know, the Parks and Cultural Affairs Committee can certainly take a look at whatever the potential impacts on park usage. It may be that Mary wants to take a look at what are the particular requirements of cannabis and medical cannabis usage among the senior population. It may be that Ariel wants to take a look at what are the possible ramifications of the legalization of cannabis and how it impacts public housing usage, and whether that winds up being like a disqualifying thing for people in public housing if they had a previous, you know, wrap for cannabis usage. I don't want to get into a conversation about it here, but it seems like we should perhaps, as committee chairs, be looking at what are the conversations, you know, adding these as agenda items to our committees so that we can have some discussions through our respective committees' lenses and get back to you on that.
Yeah, of course. So like I said, intersectionality, a series, chairs, y'all could go on ahead and just let us know.
All right, so Faye?
Thank you. All right. Well, I guess my committee or our committee had we play another round of effort to encourage youth to get involved in civic engagement. So for that, but first of all, before I go into that, I wanted just to thank the chairman, Mr. Chairman, for, you know, come or attend our meeting. Domingo also was there with us. And as part of our effort, yes, we have Paradise. She was co-chairing the meeting. I really want to thank her for that. She did a fantastic job. So yes, as I said, so what we did this month is we invited the New York City Youth Leadership Councils, And we invited also several students. We must have probably about like maybe, I don't know, around 5 or 7 students that they came to learn about the council. So, and we had 3 presenters from the council. Among of them was Kimberly Martinez, who is the outreach specialist, Rachel Opadowski, who is the professional development, and of course we have Pat Madonna, who is the youth strategy manager. So basically, what this presented is they gave them a whole view as to what the council functions. So this council in particular, what they do is that it's like they are a network for group focus on policy, practice, and advocacy to make local changes. So for example, youth who wants to get involved in policy and different topic and advocate for the community. So this is the place for them to get involved. So we have few kids that were interested. We also some of them asked the presenter also provide or encourage them to follow up with, and those who are interested. And basically, and the overall, what I learned, because I learned something myself about this council, is that they operate basically like, it's like a replica of our committee, you know, working for the community and advocating and serving as a advisory board. Some of the topic that they actually talking about, for example, they have the opportunity to be vocal on gun violence in the community, mental health, and among so many, you know, any social issue. So that's on one side. And last, I just wanted to also thank Domingo, because Domingo brought up the issue of the needs of incorporating more sport or increasing sport in schools. And also, he also mentioned that unlike the city, so New York is say more open to provide funding for that. And more is coming in our minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Mate was opening.
We get
closed.
Give me a second. Isidro, you're next. Me, Isidro, you with me?
Yeah.
You get unmuted. So let me just say this to
So
you.
the license committee
And let
had
me,
a very,
Isidro, hey, can you hear me?
yes,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Yes.
No, because that was you gonna tell you that you were muted.
So the license committee. I'm not muted. Can
There you
hear
go.
me?
Yeah, now I can.
All right, so the license committee had a really nice meeting last Wednesday. Very few agenda items. I'm also grateful for the work that obviously Ebenezer and the staff of the office has put up in producing the documentations for licensing. Also very grateful to our committee members that not only showed up, but also that are willing to write up the minutes and the resolutions. Leo Jimenez and also Maria Leah take an active role at the licensing committee. So we just had 10 licenses, only one new license, and the new license that went for a full liquor license was a very old applicant that the board had approved the license, but because the time had expired in the submission of the data, they had to come back for reapproval. 2 of them withdrew, so we actually had only 8 agenda items that were considered. Question that I have before I go into questions, Chair, is to see if you are able to add a member to the license committee. That way we'll have 11 members. Or if that's not possible, to take a member out, so we will have 9 members. It's sometimes a little bit hard to have quorum when you have even numbers in licensing. So if you can, the idea will be to add a member or take someone out from the licensing committee so we can have 9 or 11. As of now, we'll open up the floor for questions.
All right, we'll consider it and we'll talk offline.
Thank you, Chair. Any questions? Thank you.
What makes your job so hard is the fact that when you have one of your licenses in front of you, you have an entire community almost rioting against one license versus, what I just heard about Steve and how we've been almost silent about such a big problem and the way that Ozzy presented it. That I really commend Ozzy's voice and Steve's and the way that I think we should kind of like rile up against some of the things that we've been victimized. And last but not least, Richard Oldman is not going to be here. I think he called in.
Can we promote Omar Tejada?
Oh, he was here.
Yeah, he's having some connectivity issues. He keeps getting booted off.
We've been trying to promote him, but he's been having issues. Now he got promoted. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I appreciate that. All right. So we're going to go to old business.
No, you forgot Ariel. Yes.
Oh, Ariel, I spoke to you so much today. I almost forgot about you. Sorry, Ariel.
So first off, thank you all so much. Happy Black History Month. For this past month, we had a presentation done, thanks actually to Natalie, as well as Hallie Xu from the Manhattan Borough President's Office. Thank you both so much. It was in relation to essentially the funding that's been provided for many of the public housing complexes within CD12. We were made aware of some of the plans that have been brought on through what is RAD, or more specifically known as PACT now. There's the, refinancing or redevelopment and construction work being done so as to improve the quality of housing, specifically at 99 Fort Washington Avenue, in addition to two other sites, which I can't think of off the top of my head right now. We were quite frankly a bit amazed. This is definitely something that has not been seen prior. We were of course happy to hear what's been being done, given a lot of the changes that have been coming up. Of course, there's been a lot of conversation about what's happening with this financing, how is it being utilized? And so that's why I wanted to try and make sure that I gave also the opportunity for people to ask questions about this. We spoke a bit about how it's essentially changing from Section 9 to Section 8, what that means a lot for the residents, specifically what also other alternatives are available as a result of it switching to Section 8, such as specifically having a sort of sticky voucher, which has been discussed after a year of living in these Section 8 houses. It allows them to essentially move from the complexes out to what is private housing, using those very same vouchers that have been given to them. Please do take a look at our past recording. Definitely can be explained way better than I am doing right now. And lastly, I'll just mention that for the second portion of our meeting, we did discuss specifically again Fort Washington Avenue Armory, specifically how it's been being essentially utilized. We put forward a resolution to try and specifically address many of the issues that have been brought up prior. Of course, I understand that many have had a lot of concerns about how this is being essentially discussed. I have tried to make clear that I wanted to just make sure that this was open to the public. It perhaps might provide an opportunity to have a public board that might oversee this very usage of public space and also resources. And so, there is of course concern. I want to be open as much as possible, invite people to ask questions, and also talk with me a bit more about how we could potentially address the concerns that have been being raised. And lastly, there's another resolution, but I'll bring it up for, I guess, new business. James, are you still there? Can you just confirm if I should put forward a resolution for exec?
I didn't hear your question. I'm still here.
Hi. So for a resolution for the executive committee, should it be introduced now or technically new business?
New business.
There you go.
All right.
Okay, Ariel. We're almost there. So I'd like to make, before we move on to old business and new business and so forth.
I actually just wanted to make a quick note, just because of everything with the the BRC and whatnot. Yes, as Liz mentioned, those have been going on. We are specifically seeking to have a meeting with them come March now. after those 2 sessions are going to be ending. I've specifically been in contact with DHS for quite some time now. We haven't necessarily been able to get as much of a response in regards to all matters, such as specifically the Fort Washington Armory, but they have decided to come forward now and speak to us about this potential shelter site. I've already spoken to others about this. There's a potential for a different model that specifically might support supportive housing. As many of you know, we did push a resolution and passed it pretty unanimously across the entire board for this purpose. And I just want to say thank you for everyone who specifically cited many of the issues that we've brought up prior about mental health. I specifically knew I wanted to make this central throughout our conversations about supportive housing. So thanks all.
Thank you. Points of corrections on Natalie Spino corrected me on Juan Guzman. He has not resigned. He just decided that because of work reasons, as Domingo said, he's not going to reapply.
No, that's a lie. The email says I resign effective immediately.
Okay, thank you for correcting the correction. And February the 22nd is the deadline for applications. Okay, February 22nd. And we are going to send an email out to our list with the link of how to get new members to apply. All right. I have 3 quick questions related to just that. I guess Liz, Steve, Curtis.
So just very quickly, if I could get some just clarification on how the resignation process works. So if someone is resigning, they should resign and inform their committee chair and the chair, but are they required to also inform the borough president's office or not? And
Yes,
does
they
that
are.
have to be in writing or not? Because it sounds like it sounds like what Guzman did was he resigned in writing to Domingo, but he didn't send it to the chair, he didn't send it to the borough president, I don't know, but.
Correction.
We'll
He
just
did send it to the chair.
Send it
Okay,
to
as a-
the committee he was in, and as well, Wayne was in that email, so was Innisity.
Yeah,
Right, but I think if he doesn't send it to the borough president, then he
That's
hasn't
us.
resigned.
That's us. That's
Yeah,
us.
so it was sent to the chair, and in his email, it was not copied to the borough president, but it was definitely.
That's on us to send.
Yes.
Steve,
Thank you.
unmute yourself, please.
All right, thank you. I wanted to comment on Isidro's point about his committee membership. I mean, whether it's 9 or 11, I would figure if you have 9 members, it's easier to get quorum. But the committee membership should always be have an odd number to avoid possible tie votes. Not that happens very often. This is not Congress, but all committees, even the IT task force, everything should have an odd number of members.
Thank you. Curtis?
Good point, Steve.
Yeah, I just wanted to just point out, well, first of all, say thank you, Ariel, for bringing up the issue of the armory. I joined the community board at the peak of some of the armory complaints and concerns. And it's been great to see that you have allowed space for those who were concerned about the management of the armory, as well as acknowledging the work that our former chair of housing did, former chair, Aisha Ogilvy, who did so much work on bringing light to this issue. So I want to acknowledge both you and her for giving space to that. It's a very complex issue, and I've been trying my best also to understand the complexity of it. So my question to you is, there's a resolution under new business. We can't get into much of the details of that, but I want to know, based on your last 2, meetings, you've had several meetings, and I've attended many housing committee meetings on this issue. What do you think is the root issue, and what should we be doing as community board to bring awareness to this issue of the armory management.
Thanks, Curtis. So I mean, I'll just say that in regards to public facilities, public usage of the spaces, I have tried to look at this the very same way in which many others throughout the city are being used, right? You're talking about the Trust for Governors Island. You're talking about the Brooklyn Bridge Park Corporation. You're talking about the Brooklyn Navy Yard Development Corporation. Many of those have all been utilizing public boards. They're not being left to a privately run organization that specifically has to meet a certain need on their own, right? They have to fundraise, they have to get all these costs being covered. And, you know, for them to be a nonprofit, I also understand that they are also taking in perhaps grants, sometimes at millions of dollars. The history is, you know, far beyond me, far beyond, I think, a lot of us here. And the concerns have been about how do we use that space so that it really creates a more just usage of it. I think that there's been certainly a documentation that's gone back some time now about space not being utilized to the most, you know, most efficient way in which we could. And so I think creating a public board would be beneficial. But also, I say all that not just to let go of the fact that we have not spoken to DHS about this, that we haven't necessarily had clear and open communication. And I say that not to be just critical, you know, but also to just show that I'm trying to build a relationship with them. I generally want that. I came to public service, I've came to this board with that very same mentality. And so I think that there's better ways in which we can work together to address these concerns about how do we use public space. So, you know, that is my long-winded way of saying it.
Is that another question, Curtis?
No.
Oh, okay, sure. All right. So we have two more before we go into all business. We have two more agenda items to discuss. One is the inclusion resolution and the role or the reports of the task forces. So we're going to spend a few minutes on the inclusion resolution. And then if you have any questions, we're going to allow 2 or 3, and then we're going to move on to new business.
Okay, are you calling me to open this discussion?
Yes.
Okay. And it may require more than a few minutes. And I think it deserves more. It deserves its time.
It will be 5 minutes.
Continue, please.
Okay. So the inclusion resolution that passed last February, I don't have the final copy of the inclusion resolution because it was never given to me from the office. And so I do not have that, but I do have it in front of me, what I sent. So I don't have the vote, but this came out of course, some issues that this board was having that didn't start at that time. And it definitely were things going on prior to that. And there, you know, have been things going on after that, those incidents in 2019. And so this inclusion resolution, you know, spoke about a number of things, one of which is this environment that had been created, that had been exhibiting itself with bias within our board. One of the things we looked at was the importance of intersectionality and the correct, you know, definition of that. As we know, Kimberly Crenshaw, the Black law professor at Columbia, this was her way of really identifying how multiple social identities, gender and race, uniquely impact Black women. And this was, of course, later expanded intersectionality to include other social identities such as ethnicity, age, class, sexual orientation, citizenship status, ableism, religion, etc., and how these things come together to compound. And one of the things that we particularly, I want to look at the resolves, but I just wanted to go over some of the whereas, as we know that there are some stark disparities on our board that we felt needed to be addressed, including at the time, no Black women being members of the in leadership. There's still no Black women who lead the committees, and the dismal numbers and the numbers of Hispanic board members not really reflecting their community population, things like that. We also looked at the role of the executive committee, in that, as we said in the resolution, should be accountable and ensuring the board operates in a way that supports diversity, overall inclusiveness, and that's our job, is to make sure that that happens. So this, of course, this inclusion resolution and ability to move it forward lands with us, and that our the Madden Borough president, we may be able to bring Natalie into this conversation because of to engage with me on this conversation, because of the fact that their office did offer a number of things to us to help us to create a more inclusive environment. And that includes a retreat to help us to deal with, to understand more of these issues of racism, power, anti-Blackness, oppression, and inclusion. And so we land there. And so one of the questions we have is, this has been stalled for like a year, and I want to get a little bit more clarity on why. And I would just like to hear from the MBPO's office in terms of what they're prepared to do now and what that timetable could be. This is not new, as we noted in the resolution in 2000. I'm sorry, but this bias is really starting to annoy me. Like, literally, there have been people who've had this floor numerous times and spoken so many times in this meeting, and then we get to me and we get to this inclusion resolution, and you're doing
Can you please, if you have, anybody has any questions, because I want you to be able to answer the questions.
I want to call out what's going on right now,
Understand.
which is about what we're talking about. This
Sure.
bias that's being shown right now is what we're talking about in terms of the way we do our processes and our procedures in this board, and how it contributes to inequality.
Any questions to address Tanya's points?
I'm speaking though. I'm finishing my thoughts. Okay, and it's not much more left. So in our resolves, we were going to do a number of things just to refresh people's memory, because it's very important, because people don't have this in front of them. We were going to organize a retreat in conjunction with the MBPO's office that would help us, as I said, to deal with these issues. We will conduct a review of our current leadership structure, determine ways to create more opportunities for intersectional female leadership and other types of leadership. We will commit to regular retreats on an annual or semi-annual basis or whatever, recognizing, that these things are ongoing, that these discussions are ongoing, and that we would investigate the possibility of establishing a grievance committee that would serve as a place to hear and review concerns around board processes and actions. And so those were the resolves that we had. So the question that I have is, I wrote this, and thank you to Steve Simon, who contributed greatly to this, resolution. But I would like to know where this is at, what the MBP also was willing to do, how they can help us to take this seriously and move this forward. And of course, as second vice chair, I am more than capable of taking a leadership role and moving this along. So I don't know if Natalie's able to speak, but I do want to know from her what, where we stand in terms of the retreat. I know I spoke to someone else from your office and about this in the summer of last year. So is Natalie able to speak?
All right. Do we have any questions? This is the executive committee.
There's 5 hands.
All right.
And Natalie is
Chair.
Okay, we'll start with Domingo, Liz, Isidro, and Curtis. That order. I guess it's from the left on down. I have a fifth.
First? I'm not gonna lie, Curtis had his hand up first.
Oh, really?
I know he did.
Curtis.
Yes, he did.
My bad.
All right.
Curtis, Isidro, please.
So first of all, I want to acknowledge and thank Tanya for her passion, her commitment to this issue, because I do feel that she has been someone who has continuously brought up this issue. And, I know it's a very difficult conversation to have, but there's always the most growth in the most challenging conversations. So I think that we have to acknowledge, first of all, as a board, that there is an issue, right? And we have to acknowledge how someone individually feels about this particular issue. Even as, men, right? Me as a Black man, I have my own privilege. Me as a man, I have my privilege. Me as a gay man, I have my privilege, right? And I think that we have to really, really, really dive deep into acknowledging why Tanya brings this up and why Tanya is the only person that continuously brings this up. And I think the what we're missing as leaders on this exec committee is the opportunity to really, really hear her, see her, and acknowledge that what she's saying does matter. And I think that is the problem that I have with our body right now, is that we're just discrediting this whole, thing and saying that this is not a thing, right? Although it really is a thing. So,
Okay.
and let me finish.
Sure,
So I
because I
think
have
that
other hands.
I think that there's no answer to this. There's no answer that you can provide. The answer is we have to really dive deeper into the resolution and what the resolves were, and figuring out how do we move forward as a board. Just 2 weeks ago, not even 2 weeks ago, a week ago, we were debating via email for the public about Black History Month acknowledgement, right? And I think that is a very small thing. That I think that it is a very small thing, but I think that it is a thing that could easily have helped us to resolve some of the really, really critical issues on this board, and acknowledging the diversity issue on this board, and acknowledging the individuals on this board and people who have made substantial contributions on this board. And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to be biased, I'm not trying to be partisan, I'm trying to be like authentic and like really, really get this point across. And I think that give me one more minute.
He wants to get to Ariel. He wants to get to Ariel, unfortunately. So we need to discuss this though. So,
but I think that,
and I will support Ariel to the bottom of my soul. I will.
Curtis,
Trust me, I will vote yes.
I'm gonna have to mute. Curtis, just if we can please wrap it up so
Let's
that
have
we
some
can have.
because this is not working.
Yeah. Wait a second, Curtis. Wrap it up so that we can have other
my
voices
point
as
is
well.
that I think it's regardless of how we feel individually, it's really, really important for us to find a way to provide space for people to express themselves, and find space for people to acknowledge their concerns, even if we disagree, right? We may not always agree on the approach. We may have differences of how we deliver information, but the information that's being delivered is still valuable. And I think that is what I'm hearing from our membership. And that's what I'm hearing from Tanya. And I think that she deserves so much more respect and just listening than what she's been provided thus far. And that's all I have to say. I'll shut my mouth.
And I should be allowed to respond to comments and questions.
Domingo.
And I should be allowed to respond to comments. I should be allowed to respond to comments and questions like everybody else has been allowed.
He did not ask a question. It was
People
a comment.
do not have a right to respond to comments.
No, please, Domingo.
We do not have back and forth.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to agree with Curtis. When I first came to this board, I constantly raised the issue of microaggressions, and the fact that it seemed to be some class dynamics. This feeling of, and then I'm gonna have to agree with you, Curtis, on this whole notion of creating a space where people could actually be able to engage in these type of conversations. It became so hostile the following year. I believe I got 3-4 years in this board. My first year, it was just, and I'm gonna use that as context to be able to break it down, right? Which is, it was horrible. It was just biased as hell, mad micro racism going on. You know what I'm saying? And I'm gonna be straight up, white folks thinking they could speak for communities of color. You know what I'm saying? And that was my experience coming into the board. As we transitioned and we had different leadership, what my concern was that it became a situation about microaggressions and racism and misogyny, whatever you want to label it, and it just became about the individual versus the ideology. You know what I'm saying? I believe in intersectionality. I believe that there's something going on. But as people of color, we all could contribute to movements that liberate us from oppression. All of us, not just certain individuals who feel that they could speak more than you. And I agree completely with Tanya, and I'm with it. But this is bigger than just Tanya. This is bigger than everybody on this board. This is a systematic issue that has been happening for hundreds of years, right? And that has oppressed people of color in the margins. It has oppressed poor people. So let's be real about what we're talking about, and let's stop making it seem like it's just about one person. This is about an entire community who's experiencing this. And let's build rainbow coalitions. Let's not just build self-proclaimed coalitions.
Theodore, Catherine, Debbie.
So if we were to speak
then
about equality. Hello?
Yeah, we're here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
So if we're going to speak about equality, let's make sure that whoever is assigned or allotted time to speak, that we have a time limit. Because it's not fair that people are given privileges about having whatever time they want to speak about on a specific issue. Just let's be consistent. The second point that I want to bring up is I don't have a problem in diversity, but if we're going to speak about diversity, let's do proportionality then for each of the groups that are represented at the community board, because our Latino brothers and sisters are way underrepresented in a lot of different ways. And they're not usually allowed to speak their mind because they're afraid about language. So there is a language discrimination here as well. And that has to be addressed. So if we're going to address any topic, that has to be addressed. Because I'm not going to allow and sit here and not be active on this topic. We have supported our causes. I think that we have moved along. There are issues that perhaps should be addressed, but let's do it in a civil way. If we are civil, we can take on any issue. We can tackle any problem, but we got to be respectful, and we have to be mindful that we are not here to attack one another, because I think that we understand our problems. We understand what the issues are, but let's just be civil about it. Let's have an open conversation without disrespecting anyone, and that includes time. Because I'm not going to allow and sit here and listen to people for 10 minutes while others are only allowed to speak for 1 minute. Let's just be fair. That's just my point. Thank you so much.
All right. Catherine, I want you to talk about my initiative of the survey of what we're doing for the next couple of months.
All right. If time me for it then, because it
please.
requires, some
Yeah,
time.
people
I think one of the things, when Tanya,
Yeah,
when you mentioned about,
Yeah, go ahead.
Excuse me, I had my hand up regarding
I had
what
my hand up.
Tanya had said.
But she was first.
I had
So
my
if you
hand
have
up
to say
as
anything,
well. That's
okay,
why I
you
said
spoke to me.
5.
Yeah, thank
Oh,
you.
I
I'm
can't raise
sorry.
it.
I thought you were moving on to a different issue. My bad.
No, I can't. No, we're still on the same topic. It's just that there's 5 hands, but as a co-host, I can't raise my hand. Where was I going to start? Oh yeah. So when, I forgot when it happened. We're just going to go a little back in time. When when the formal resolution went out, and I want to say that was maybe in the fall. And there was an acknowledgement, right? I think that there are space for various truths, and in the mix of the pandemic, and I'm not making excuses for one thing or another. I'm just saying what part of it was the delay in putting it out, was living in a pandemic. But prior to that, when probably the month before, and what was it, like my first month, and going into the office and talking with Eliezer, was around concrete steps on the inclusion resolution, and the pandemic hit. And part of that, and from what I remember, and I'm looking at it now, there's 5 resolves. And what we had discussed early on was about actually getting an understanding, right, to like what Curtis was saying earlier, what Domingo was also saying about creating space, because there are we're 50 people on a good time, right? We're 50 people, and yet we often don't hear from all 50, right? And that could be out of people's own comfort levels. Those are people's maybe they're just not the outspoken type. But that doesn't mean that not all 50 people aren't able to weigh in. And so what I had started was a procurement process, right? In that there was a budget, and we have our budget. And part of that opportunity is that we are also able, as a volunteer board, we're also able to procure for facilitators who can support these efforts, right? Around and it's bigger, right? Like on a personal tip, I'm gonna second what Domingo's saying, because I'm not here to say like in one meeting, and I'm not here for a Starbucks. I'm not here for like 1 year out of a person's life who is maybe in their 60s or in their 20s, right? Like we're talking about hundreds of years of oppression, colonization, and systems that are also reflective within the board, right? And it's reflective within the space of the board because we don't have necessarily power over different agencies. So my point real quick around time is that this process started, and this procurement process started with one of the lead groups that I had recommended, which is actually a co-op called Afro Resistance.
Almost fine. Good. We'll talk about Afro resistance later. Something initiative that Catherine and I have been working on.
Point blank, there were steps starting that the pandemic interrupted. And, I agree there's four, which is why I think it should be a standing agenda item. There are 4 resolves, and I do think we need to carve out space intentionally to think about how are we actually going to move forward, right? Because one discussion in one meeting isn't going to happen, right? And there are voices that are missing here. And it's important.
There are 7 resolves.
Thank you.
There are 7 resolves.
So Catherine, please, I gotta cut you off.
Yeah.
Debbie, please keep it as brief as you can. Liz, and then I'm gonna finish it with Ozzy, and then I'm gonna make a final comment on it. We're gonna move on to the next agenda item.
So such bias.
Debbie?
I think that some of what I was going to say, I think was what Catherine was getting at, but I think we all, need to be kinder to each other, that this is complicated, and to never presume bad faith. And it seems like we've got a lot of that going around. There's certainly so many issues, and depending on what seat you sit in, your list is going to be different. But I think we can all agree there's stuff with bias, there's stuff with women, there's stuff with Black, there's stuff with Latino, and how that fits in as a dominant in the pop, Asijo's points about, the imbalance. But I also think like we're a community board, we're a volunteer thing. I think just because some of us may have different appetites for what we want to take on in this setting. So I might want to take on and kind of explore that, but I have to be brutally honest. I don't know that I want to take on all of it in systems in my community board life. However, but also saying that of like, we did commit to this and we had this resolution. But I also think like it's almost like too much, and that maybe we could be more successful. Again, going about what are the concrete steps? Can we carve out within that something that we feel is achievable for this board? And I don't mean to shirk the fact that there were a lot of resolutions. I'm just saying realistically, one, are there things we could carve out with a facilitator? And I don't know, these initiatives that you're to sort of make something that we can achieve, and let us take a first positive step together to address something. And it won't be all of it, but it's getting too much like, because nothing happened, that there's all this like, it's because it's this and it's because it's that. Like, let's also just set ourselves up for success and take a small step and move something forward. And maybe then we can build on it. But trying to take it all on is just, it doesn't seem to me as something that's gonna break the log jam, so to speak. And I do, I appreciate everybody's efforts here, but this isn't easy. And just the last sort of practical suggestion I would make is, I've been around this, and sometimes I have been the one to say, and I got a lot of heat for it, to sort of say, I don't want to take this on now. And the reason I say that is this is big and it's hairy and it's complicated, and it's going to take a professional facilitator, and it can't be something we add in the moment on a night saying, can I add it and get my 5 minutes? We need to create whatever space that is to have it, because it's never going to work to have a 10-minute conversation.
Okay,
It's
Debbie,
never,
I'm
you
gonna
got
have
to
to cut you
do
off.
it as a separate initiative would be my guidance.
Thank
And
you.
I have been asking for that separate
Oh,
initiative.
so,
And
So-
I
and
have
I
been, and
see-
I was the one that wrote it.
Excuse me. Let me
You're
continue to move the building
silencing
along.
me. You're
Ozzy?
silencing me, and that is
Ozzy,
bias. What you're
please.
doing is bias
Sure.
because you're
Go ahead.
silencing me.
Ozzy?
I haven't even had a chance to respond. And as a
But there's
person
no
who
que-
wrote
you don't-
this,
There's no
and
questions.
I don't even have
There's
a
just
and you
comments.
and you
Ozzy, would you please? Thank you.
Excuse me, I was next, and then OC was
Oh, you're
going
next?
after me.
Okay, let's go
Yes.
ahead.
Thank you. So I would like to say two things. One is, it is very late, and this meeting is very long, and I would like to say that I am here for it, and I will stay for as long as we have to, because this is important. And the second thing that I have to say is, well, I have three things. The second thing I have to say is I appreciate this being added as an ongoing item, and I think the more that we have it as a check-in so that we can see what progress we're making, the less difficult these conversations will become. And the final thing I have to say is I was one of the 7 members of Community Board 12 who was a member, who's still a member now, who was also a member in 2009 when we had our board retreat. It was very productive. It was not easy, but it was really satisfying. Jim was one of the people who was there. Wayne was there. And I cannot support strongly enough doing that again. My only regret is that it will have taken us so long. So with that, I yield my time.
Thank you. Ozzy, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, so we are not meeting, we are not in a physical space. And if you remember, all of you, when the meeting used to, when the meeting ended, when we were in a physical space, we would just linger for another 20 minutes or half an hour until we leave. During the time we had conversation, even though if it's a small conversation among us, and this is gone, it's not there right now. So I'm kind of being a little practical about that. And I think that if we can designate, I want to say 15, 20 minutes after the meeting ends to just have like a social kind of thing that we can speak about something, or one person talk about some experience they had, and take alternate, like every month have somebody else talking about something. That will help a little bit. It's not going to replace anything in a physical space, but I think it's something that can help. That's my my 2 cents.
Omar, since you haven't said anything mostly, I'll give you the last shot, and then we'll move on to the next agenda item. It's 9 o'clock.
Thank you. I will say this. Everything has been said, a lot of different points of views here, and I'm not going to reiterate or regurgitate them. They were all extremely important. I will say this, that I echo some of what Debbie said. You know, if you try to do everything, you end up doing nothing. So I think it's important that we focus and try to see what we can accomplish. And part of that is having this conversation stay at the top, making it visible continuously. Because what ends up happening is when this conversation is not visible is when we begin to feel marginalized. So whether that's a task force that's created to make sure that this topic continues to be a topic that we cover, I think those are important things. Those are things that can go in the right step. So that's only my 2 cents. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. We're gonna go to the last agenda item on the task forces. I have about 3 minutes, just like every other report.
My introducing this item was to ensure that there's accountability around our task forces that are created within Community Board 12. And I think the role of the executive committee is to be that accountability board, is to be that committee that's holding us accountable and taking the lead in that. And so I think that, when we look at things like the Inwood's rezoning task force has been around in various iterations or trying to get off the ground for a number of years, going back as much as 7 or something like that. And there are task forces that we have on the books, including one I'm supposed to be on. And that hasn't, we really haven't done anything in 3 years. And you get various reasons for it. You hear, oh, we're not allowed to do anything, those sort of answers. But I just think it's important that we know where these task forces stand and that we are holding ourselves accountable, that the goals of those task forces are moving forward, that if they're not formed, they need to be formed so the work can move forward. And that includes the bylaws task force, that many task forces that hold some important work within our board that can make a difference. And we want to make sure those things are moving forward. So the goal of this is to have this be a standing item every month, and so people can give reports on where things are standing. If there are complications or challenges, this committee can help people to resolve that, so this could continue to move forward. If there are issues that we need to address within that we can address those issues and make sure that those task forces are representative of our communities and that we are inclusive in our work within those task forces. And so that's how that came about. That's what I would like to see. And I think we need to make appropriate time for these sort of things, because I think that is really, our role. And the appropriate time needs to be made to address these type of things on our board.
Thank you. 3.
Did I have more time?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to use that time to say that I never intended for this conversation about the inclusion to carry on, to be inclusive of tonight. I do understand it's an ongoing thing. What I wanted to accomplish tonight was to see what we can move forward on. What is the most immediate thing that we can move forward on that we can now launch? And I also don't think that it is prudent to do work and not include the person who wrote it. And that's what, according to the report Kathy gave and what you've indicated, Eleazar, that's what's happened. I haven't been included in any of those conversations. So that's not very inclusive.
Thank you for your points. Steve, hopefully just help me with the order. I'm gonna take 5 1-minute questions or comments, please. Guys, help me out. Steve, Curtis, I think it was second. Steve, Curtis, Wayne, Domingo, that order.
Well, I tell you, I'm not sure where we are on the agenda, but I just have to say,
This is the last item on the agenda.
Well, I don't know that we had a sufficient discussion about the previous item. I just want to say that that this board took a vote. We voted, I think, nearly unanimously in support of that resolution. It's incumbent upon us, since we did vote, that we see to it that at least some of it is implemented. It was my hope that we would at least have a retreat by now. Obviously, the pandemic interfered with that, and can't really have much of a retreat since we can't even meet. But I think we should at least maybe lay the groundwork so that once we're able to, we can have that retreat. And I agree with Debbie, and I agree, I think, with Omar, that we should look at what's achievable in that resolution. Maybe we cannot carry out every single thing, but we did pass it. And we went through the whole effort of voting on it, writing it and voting on it. We need to, we can't just ignore it. And so I think, I'm sorry, I don't have the resolution in front of me, and we all don't have it in front of us. But we need to really.
Thank you, Steve.
It doesn't reflect well on us that we voted on something and didn't carry out any of it.
Appreciate that. Next, Domingo, Curtis, Wayne, Omar.
Curtis.
Was Curtis second?
Task force issue.
Oh,
So
my bad.
I'm speaking on the task force issue. I think it's really, really important for us for the chair or whomever to really focus the task force, because I'm on the LGBT task force. And I think it's really important. It's an important intersection with the the inclusion resolution of including people who are queer in our community. You know, Boxers closed down during the pandemic. You know, as a man, as a gay Black man in the country, in this community, it's very important for me to also advocate not only for the issues of people of color, but also to make sure that I'm raising awareness to the issues impacting the LGBT community. And I think that you know, we have for the last the years, there has not been much conversation about what the LGBT task force should be doing. So my recommendation is to give more directive to make sure that the task force, the goal of task force is to intersect or to align with all the other committees, right? The business community, you know, all the committees, right? Just to figure out how we can support that particular demographic of people. And I think that I would be remiss if I did not mention that as a member of the LGBT community. So I want to just thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. Wayne?
Yeah, so speaking on the issue of task force, we have a number of standing task force. The inward task force is not actually a CB12 task force, it's an EDC task force. But I mean, we have task force, those task forces have members and they have chairs. And at this executive committee, using, you know, Curtis's example, you know, typically Richard is here, and when it comes to his presentation, there is nothing to say this month, there'll be something next month. So I don't know if it's a matter of the executive committee not holding anyone, you know, accountable. The task force, just like a committee, can have internal discussions, develop their priorities, and report to the exec committee on what they discuss and what they're pursuing for the next several months or for the year. So I think we need to, you know, just turn the camera around, focus it on those task force and say, tell us what you're doing, report to us, because you have members, you have a chair, it's your responsibility to do that. Just like it's our responsibility as committee chairs to report. There's no difference.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate your comments. Great comments. Domingo, Omar.
Yeah, it was similar to what Wayne was saying about how we all have our responsibilities, and especially when it came to these what I would consider like ad hoc committees, right? It's like a lot of individuals partake in our executive committee, and they never have a report to give. So it's like, so what's the purpose of having these committees? And if there are committee members, I suggest that there should be email sent out to the listserv, or to the community board, whoever, the entire community board, and figuring out who's interested in participating within these ad hoc committees, you know, or these task forces, right? And I think it's important to hold people accountable to that.
Thank you. Omar?
I just want to bring up, when it comes to task forces, as well as to the inclusion conversation that we just had right now, we speak about participation. We speak about what can we do during this time period. You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention as treasurer what I mentioned before. This board is projecting about a $10,000 surplus. I think there's an opportunity there. We might not be able to meet in person. To the last topic, maybe we can have a Zoom call with a professional that can help us, guide us through these conversations to begin this conversation. Maybe we can do something in that nature. I think that's an opportunity that we can go in the right direction. Aisha, I am reading your comments in your Q&A, and I did read the part about maybe a public meeting in the Armory. It just depends how people feel about being in person, even socially distanced. But I do bring up the fact that maybe we can bring professionals into a Zoom call, and we can have something that's dedicated and make it an open and safe space, because our meetings now are all in Zoom calls anyway. Maybe this is another avenue. Okay.
Right, Omar. Appreciate that. Thank you for your comments. Ariel, you're going next into new business, so I'm going to leave it at that. Then I'm going to make some closing remarks after we go after new business. So, floor is yours.
Catherine raised her hand.
We
What was
received
that?
a resolution that was sent to us prior to the meeting, and I thought that was the first item of new business.
I'll make that decision shortly. Everyone else has already had a minute or so. Omar, you want to put your hand down because I'm confused with you. So
I have my hand up.
Go ahead, make it short, Faye, before I move on.
Thank you. I just want to be very brief as usual. I just wanted to say that is really worries me a lot to see all this dysfunctional type of tone and conversation. And I really wonder if there is any way in which we can have not such elaborated topic or this type of conversation, because this is actually on YouTube and everywhere. And if we can minimize, and not elaborate this so much. So I wanted to suggest that if we can have like a meeting of the mind and have this discussion as whatever you wanted to have it, but not so elaborated, because this is really not a good thing for the reputation of the board. And that's all that I wanted to say. Personally, I'm fine, but I don't think this should take so much time publicly.
Thank you, Faye.
Thank you.
Catherine, before I move on.
Yeah, this is on the task force item and something I think that Natalie brought up last month or at the last exec meeting, where we basically choose, right? And I think one of the issues that task forces have had and ad hoc committees on this board is the reality that we serve on two, and then I'm not saying this is the same for everyone, but for a lot of people, right? They serve on two committees. We have our general meeting, and then there was at one moment maybe 4 ad hoc committees. And what I remember was that there were challenges in filling and making sure that each committee or every ad hoc committee that somebody wanted to serve would actually have, right, enough quorum, enough people with interest where they would actually contribute to moving that agenda along. And I say this as something not to resolve tonight or in the next month, but something to think about, and perhaps find a way, as we're discussing with other board members, of assessing, what we want the assignments, right, or our duties on the board to look like, right? Because the more ad hoc committees that we raise, are we investing in them, right, with people with time, the way that they should? So I think it's just something to consider.
Okay. Thank you very much. And before I move on to new business, I'd like to congratulate and thanks Tanya for bringing those 2 extremely great points into our agenda. I think that was extremely key so that we can restart this conversation. Thank you, Tanya, once again. And
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, I'm going to call you back
so
on.
So is this going to be, I just want to know what we're doing going forward, just a little clarity. So is the inclusion, are we saying the inclusion resolution is going to be something that's going to be on the agenda going forward? Are the task force going to be on the agenda going forward? What are we saying?
What we're trying to accomplish is of those 7 items, we're going to pick as an executive committee, those items that we, like Steve said, that they are realizable goals, and we're going to start attacking them. And we're going to go those 7 points, those 7 resolves. And then we're going to start addressing them one by one before we go into the retreat and before we start the initiative that Catherine and I had been working on prior to the pandemic on the survey. And then we'll call you in because we started in February and then boom, we got the pandemic right there and then. So there was really no time to develop the thought or to develop the idea.
I think a retreat would be good because it could be very educational. And just so you know, no one asked my expertise, but I have participated in many retreats done virtually since the pandemic, since last year, like numerous retreats on this very thing have been done via Zoom, and it's possible to be done. I just don't think we should be creating systems when we don't even understand, when we haven't had the direct appropriate training in these systems of racism, anti-Blackness, oppression, other isms. Like, we need to get that training before we can really get into the work to make sure we're doing it in a way that's appropriate.
No problem, but we'll discuss that offline. We'll start an email thread, Catherine. We'll bring Tanya in and everyone else as the executive committee. So Ariel, on.
Hi all. Yeah. So very quickly, I'll just mention. So I shared with pretty much everyone before the meeting a resolution that was asked of me to be brought forward by the Housing and Human Services Committee, specifically in reference to how essentially resolutions are being handled both before and also after they've then been essentially voted on and passed potentially by a board. This is just trying to focus in on how a process could be essentially implemented, specifically utilizing the IT task force. You know, as I've mentioned, just within committee and how I've also spoken even to Mariel about this, the reason I think that this has been brought forward is just that, you know, going off of some of the issues that have been raised about how materials might essentially reach some of the committees and perhaps not. People want to just ensure that there is a very smooth process for trying to ensure that going forward. You know, and I think, quite frankly, if we're to try and bring forward these kind of items in the future, I do want to try and begin to have a bit more of a conversation going on with our district manager in addition to our board staff, because I do realize that they are also doing just an enormous amount of work, specifically throughout this time, and I of course want to just be helpful for any way in which I can be as a even a board or committee chair.
Thank you, Ariel. I'm sure that everyone got to read it. Do I have any objections to Ariel's resolution?
I don't know the resolution to which you're referring. I don't see that I've received it.
Ariel, I thought you sent it. I have it, but you sent it to everyone again?
Yes, and maybe I sent it to the wrong email for you, Wayne. I have here, let's see, wb1905@aol.com.
Ooh, that is so old.
Okay.
Earthlink.net.
The same.
Yes.
Okay.
Do I have any objections? I would like to
Hello?
get the order from whoever raised their hands first, because I want to give someone a shot to at least speak. Rosie, you have anything to say? No? Because the same people get to speak over and over and over. Okay, Liz.
Just really quickly, I have a bunch of really small changes, none of which is substantive. And in consideration of the time, do you mind, Ariel, if I just offer you a couple of like Gramo form changes before it goes out to the full board for consideration?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I don't want to bore anybody right now with like commas and things like that. But the substance of it is fine.
Like Omar. Oh, you're gonna do that? Oh, just okay. Omar, Curtis, Omar, whoever's first.
No, I was just gonna acknowledge that Natalie has had her hand raised in the comment section, and just in case she wanted to say something, that's all it was. But she's not a panelist, so we have to go and add her if she wanted to say something.
We'll bring her up in just a few seconds.
Yep.
Ebenezer, if you want to promote her. She has my number though. At least the text would have, because I'm not paying attention to the Q&A. Curtis.
Thank you very much. It's just a quick acknowledgement that I think as we talk about inclusion and just being compassionate to our fellow board members, that we also extend that same compassion to our office staff. I know it has not been easy to work from home and to keep track of all of the communication. You know, we can strive to do the best we can, but I just want to just thank them for the work that they're doing, and also just acknowledge that, you know, it is a thing, working from home, it is not easy. So thank you all for what you do, and that's all I have to say.
Taking remote schooling is not easy, brother. I'll tell you that. Okay, so no objections, so the resolution is passes. Great.
Wait,
Good.
who made the motion? And I didn't hear anyone second it.
I second, Curtis. I second. I'm sorry. I'm second. That
Curtis
was the second. That was the second and a comment.
Can you say it all over again? Who made the motion?
Curtis.
Well,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Curtis seconded.
We voted?
I'm abstaining. I haven't had a chance to look it over.
I'm abstaining too.
Okay.
Rosie, are you
Abstentions.
making notes?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great.
Well, quick question. What is the urgency or the purpose of it being voted on by the exec committee as opposed to by the full board?
Well, it would have
The
to go before
resolution
the,
of the executive committee being presented to the full board because it's an administrative
Yeah,
item.
Liz, but if some of us, like myself, got it 5 minutes ago,
Oh, you
it
mean
makes it
go
a little
next month?
difficult. The point is, can't, the same way that is introduced as new business here, can it simply be on the agenda for the,
It
for
will
the
be.
full committee to look at?
In my,
And we'll get it in a timely manner.
So I would say that I'm not sure if I have the authorization to speak, Mr. Chairman. Yes or no?
Yeah, sure.
Well, actually, this was
I was the
this was a
person who-
question to the chair.
All right. So the answer, the easy answer is, it needs to be ratified in the general board meeting anyways, or it has to either come from his committee or the executive committee.
No, it's a,
This is at the general meeting.
So my point was I attended the Ariel's committee meeting, and I actually made the motion to move it to the exec committee because it was going to be it was going to be tabled at his committee, and I felt that it was an issue that is an operational and oversight issue involving the tracking of our resolution, the tracking of our information that comes from the office, which we've discussed many times tonight. So I thought it was more so an oversight issue and a management issue that comes from the top level of the board that would be best suited for us to discuss how we want to move forward with tracking our resolution and the work of our board. So that's why it ended up here.
Well, isn't it a bylaws change?
No.
No.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so we're good. Just so we can finish the discussion. Mingo, you had something to say?
Yeah, I'm confused. So Curtis, this is coming from the committee, or this is coming like the executive committee is the one doing this resolution?
No, he's just presented to the executive committee.
Yeah, if I could comment on all this, resolution for some time, if you don't mind.
All right, so
If you don't mind.
Okay.
Vote on
Jim, okay, Domingo, wait. Jim, just give some clarity, and then we can move on.
This is coming from the executive committee. Based upon what we heard, everyone is in favor of it except for the two people who abstained. Unless anyone has anything further to say, we can go on to the next resolution.
I'm just confused because I don't understand what we're like. Yeah.
So you don't understand the resolution?
I'm just seeing it now.
Well, let's take 2 minutes and look at it. We can all have it's not very long, right?
May I make a suggestion?
I don't even have it.
Wait, may I make a suggestion? This is a very important issue, and it's something that we should consider and take seriously, but it's a very important issue that's been a problem for a very long time. And while it's appropriate for the executive committee to take action on it, rather than taking action on it tonight, we could digest this and then have it as an agenda item at our next meeting so that we can have a full discussion about it, having had the opportunity to really read it and consider it. And rather than voting on it in haste, we can vote on it having considered it fully as an administrative item
Wait,
next
Domingo.
month.
I agree with it. I'm sorry.
All right, good. So Debbie, one last comment before we make a
Can
decision.
someone send this document to me? Because I never received it.
Go ahead,
As
Debbie.
I understand what Liz said, she was asking that we table the motion till next month. Is that what you were saying?
That is correct.
Already passed.
Okay, Liz made a motion that we table this till next month. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
The motion
Fine.
already passed.
The motion passed.
Did it?
If the motion passed, then we can just pass it.
We have to
Wait,
move on.
no.
How did it pass? I didn't read it.
Curtis.
I didn't even get it.
Wait a second.
It was
There was a
moving too
question.
fast. If we're gonna vote on it, let's vote on it. If we're gonna table it, let's table it. Like,
There was a motion, Ariel motion, and I seconded it.
Wait, everybody mute. Everybody just relax.
I guess we have to undo it.
Okay.
You don't undo something that passed.
All right. Can we not just come on?
Oh, yes. Well,
All right.
there was
So
misunderstanding.
Debbie, one last comment before we go back to Liz's point, because we've already passed the resolution. The question of who objects to the resolution was asked twice. Until Wayne asked, why is the rush? Then all the other responses came forward. Okay, so we passed the resolution. No matter how we slice it, 2 abstentions. Do you want to change your vote and abstain? That's a different story.
Did I vote?
Do you want to vote?
Where did the
in
vote
effect,
happen?
In effect, you did, because Eli said, are there any objections? No one said any objections. That means you voted. And then
Well,
two
to
people
be
said they
fair,
abstained.
Jim, when he said, are there any objections, that's what I asked. What was
Listen,
crushed?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think
You
that.
know, you know what? Everybody's talking at once. I didn't hear
Yes.
anything about, are there any objections? I didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't know there was a resolution. I saw the email. I didn't get a chance to read anything
Okay,
or
so
open it up.
here's what I'll do.
Too much.
We're gonna
I don't know
table it.
nothing about it.
Faye, would you?
Maybe it
can
might
you
And
just
I don't
be
even know where this resolution came from.
mute yourself, Mary?
Can we, is-
Mary. Okay, here's
Chair,
what I'll
can I
do.
say, can I ask one question?
Here's what I'll do.
Can-
We're gonna
The author
Ariel,
of the
Ariel, Curtis,
Ariel,
Curtis,
yes.
let me finish. Ariel, obviously, there's consensus that not a lot of people on such an important issue was able to get acquainted with the issue. So what I will do is to table it until we can get a full understanding of what this entails and what the resolution is, its implications, and we can all contribute to it and have a better sense of what we're voting for.
Somebody
Okay.
need to make a motion to table it.
So,
President.
Motion to
Um,
table.
If I may just make a point of order, would it just be easier for me to at least at this time try and, I guess, just read off what it is?
it's too
Because-
early, Ariel. I mean, people need time. They just.
I already
that's
made a
coming out.
motion to table it and it was.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Okay,
Liz
who
made a
seconds,
motion
who
to
seconds that
table it.
motion?
OC seconded
I
it.
second the motion.
Okay,
Right. Is
motion
there
table.
anyone
That's it.
opposed to tabling it? Otherwise, we'll have to vote on tabling it, and then we're
I
going to go on.
I oppose to tabling it because I believe author.
Okay,
Ariel-
OC, take a vote on tabling the motion.
Okay, hold on.
Do you want me to roll call or?
Yes.
Isn't it easier to take a vote on the people
No.
who changed the vote and voting the resolution down since it already passed?
It would have been easier, except we are now where we are, so we have to follow the rules. Liz made a motion to table it. That's now what's on the floor. Now, if you want to do what you want to do, then vote not to table it, and then we can talk about it some more.
Okay, because I wanted to ask a question, but I wasn't allowed to. I wanted to say something, but I wasn't allowed to. I was just going to say, is it possible that we could have just been put on the screen and we could have looked at it? And it doesn't seem very long as somebody just sent it to me.
Okay,
Can we have just looked at it and then?
no, we have a motion on the floor to table the resolution. Ozzy,
We also had a
roll.
motion that passed.
Do you want me to-
Those
Do you want me to-
are residents that you're not ready to live with.
Right, exactly.
The motion actually didn't pass because Eli never announced that the motion had passed that I can remember. Did he?
Go back to YouTube and you'll see he said motion passed.
No, but we didn't get a chance to vote. I didn't realize it wasn't going to be a roll call and then it's all moving fast. And Mary
Right, I
said
was
the same
waiting.
thing. Is it so costly for us
wait a
to
minute,
table it
wait
for
a
a month?
minute.
The simplest thing to do is to table it
Wait
for
a
a month.
minute.
And meanwhile, that's what the Robert's rules say. We must,
What is
right
the
now,
month?
all we can do is decide on whether or not we want to table the motion. We cannot do anything else except adjourn, in which case we won't have passed the resolution we need to pass next.
So
So
as a
let's
point of
vote
order-
on whether or not we want to table this
So let's
resolution.
let's roll call.
Okay.
Sorry, but
roll
wait,
call.
there has to be a point of order here. The motion passed. And I understand that you guys are saying that some of you did not see it, but really, if you're hearing someone saying, let's decide whether or not this is going to pass, then you say something.
It's too many people.
I didn't hear that because so many people were talking.
Didn't hear it either, and I'm willing to read it right now and vote. But I
Pause.
just didn't.
Can
I
we
don't
pause
have it
for
in
three-
front of me.
All right, okay,
Can we
okay,
pause
okay.
Pause
All
for
right.
3 minutes and read the resolution. Pause.
Okay,
I'm
so
willing to do that.
Are we going to have an
support you.
opportunity to then ask more questions?
Ebenezer, mute every goddamn body. Come on. Okay, resolution as it stands, whether you had the time or not, unfortunately, passes. Unless Robert's rules says otherwise. Jim, last word on this before we move on.
According to the recollection of several people, and I will go by their recollection, and it's unfortunate that things were so confusing, but several people have a very clear recollection that no objections were heard when you said that you asked whether there were any objections, and there were no objections. So based upon what we heard from these witnesses, who, obviously we believe, the resolution passed. After that fact, apparently, that's when Liz decided to table it, probably because she was confused about whether or not it had passed. But if it had passed, then the resolution to table it would be out of order.
So you have a second shot at voting it down or whatever you want to do at the general meeting. So resolution.
Right, exactly.
Okay, good, great. Moving on.
Thank you.
On the celebration of Black History, Tanya's initiative, I'll give her entirely full credit for it. I am presenting the statement written in collaboration with the executive committee as a resolution to be adopted by the full board. The board, as everyone knows, speaks through resolutions, and this is an important statement to make. The resolution, I'm sure you guys have it. I'll read it as such. If you want to read it, or you want me to share, or is everyone paying attention? My assumption is that yes.
What resolution? You mean the statement we put together?
Resolution of Black History Month.
That was a statement.
That is just what it was written amongst you guys, amongst us, was a statement, both in English and Spanish, which, by the way, Catherine, thank you for allowing me to collaborate on it. But the resolution is as such. It says, whereas February is Black History Month, and whereas Community Board 12 Manhattan wishes to endorse Black History Month with the appended statement, therefore be resolved that Community Board 12 Manhattan authorizes the appended official statement to celebrate Black History Month. That is the resolution.
Okay, I just have one question about that.
Just as everyone else, you want to go first? Want to take a first shot? Because I have three other people questions.
Yes, as the person who wrote this, and as a Black person, I would like to speak first on this issue, because I think that's important that we are in front of that. So yes, I was just going to ask about the process, because we do have other, and like I said in the beginning when I first sent this over to people, that I thought it was important that we do this for all other types of things, whether it's Hispanic heritage or women's history or LGBTQ acknowledgement, all of those different, or pride, all of those different things I think is really important. And so if we are doing this via resolution that only can pass at the end of the month, that means we can't put out statements that's acknowledging that these statements are going out when the month is over. It just doesn't make logical sense. I think what would be better is if we created standing rules about how do we handle these sort of things. And I can say I've spoken to 3 other community boards about about their protocol, and they don't do this. They actually laugh because they didn't understand what we were doing. They like, we couldn't, what's the point of putting out a acknowledgement of women's history, for example, at the end of Women's History Month? We just give it, either the board members themselves would craft it and give it to the district manager, or the district manager would craft these statements and then ask for feedback and they would put it out. But there's no like voting process about, and I did reach out to 3 different boards about that.
Tanya. I have 5 more questions or comments to make. Debbie, is that the hand up from the last time, or you just raised it?
Both. But just on this one, I'm just not clear why we would, we did the statement and we're celebrating it, and that already went out, right? So why is this a resolution? Like, it seems a weird thing to have a resolution on, and I also wouldn't say endorses. Like, I think we celebrate, or we're like, so I guess I'm not sure why it's a resolution. And then also, if it is a resolution, I wouldn't want to say endorses it. It's not like, we're celebrating it, right?
If I could make a parliamentary comment as to why it's a resolution, basically, as Tanya pointed out, we never celebrated these various holidays in the past, and we've created this new policy. Now, we could make the resolution more general, that we, have a policy of celebrating all similar holidays. But I think just for now, just to get things moving, and I think it's very important, like was said, the resolution went out the day after it was written. This is just the paperwork to authorize it. And basically, anytime the community board does anything, including sending a letter, a resolution has to authorize that. And
Okay,
so this
thanks.
is,
All right. That's
excuse
cool.
me, I'm not finished talking yet.
No, but you answered.
So
Just agreeing with you.
well, first you let me finish talking, and then we can discuss what this disagreement there might be. So that is the policy. It's always been our policy, and committees cannot send out letters. Groups of community board members cannot tell the office to send out letters. The community board decides to do what it does. And furthermore, you know, and again, the letter's already out. It's a beautiful, I mean, the statement is already out. Everyone has seen it and everyone is very pleased with it. And everyone will have an opportunity at the general meeting to actually vote and say, yes, I am in favor of this.
All right, time. The first hand from the four I have, who is it?
Me.
Domingo, Steve. Okay, Liz, go ahead.
So I would like to propose 2 additions to this, or amendments. One is a third whereas, which says, whereas Community Board 12 Manhattan may wish from time to time to endorse and celebrate other commonly observed celebrations, e.g. International Women's Day on March 8th, Dominican Independence Day on February 27th, Pride Month in June, Veterans Day on November 11th, etc., which it is fitting to endorse with an appropriate statement, therefore be it resolved, and then have, and be it further attached to the resolved, and add an additional resolved that says, resolved, that Community Board 12 Manhattan authorizes the chair in collaboration with the executive committee to issue from time to time similar such statements to celebrate such civil observations. That way, when someone has an idea of like, hey, we should put out a statement for, you know, Dominican Pride or Women's History, which is on the 8th of next month, we can just do it without having to have the whole conversation about like an enabling resolution where we're doing this again.
Amendment
Is there a
accepted.
second to that?
Yeah, amendment accepted.
Or you're just accepting it as friendly?
Yeah, friendly amendment.
Fantastic. I will send you the language.
Sounds good. Curtis, is you're next, right?
Yes, so I am going to try to be as diplomatic as possible, but I think that this entire resolution is, excuse my language, but bullshit. Because frankly speaking, I mean, the resolution says authorizing, and I find that offensive. You don't authorize the celebration of Black History Month. That is an insult to me.
Thank you.
And you don't authorize the celebration of Black History Month. Black History Month is a month. It is part of our history. It is a part of this country's history. It's a part of my history for 400 plus years in this country. So I find it very offensive. And I'm sorry to sound so angry, but the use of authorizing Black History Month as a resolution sounds fucked up to me, and I don't like it. So I'm not going to support this resolution by any means necessary. I'm not going to support it.
Right.
Also, this speaks to the need, Eleazar, as a chairperson, to really, really refine our bylaws task force and to really push people to think about, well, what is it? This is communication. This is a standard communication protocol that, as Tanya mentioned, several boards across the city acknowledge Black History Month, acknowledge Dominican History Month, acknowledge Women's History Month. And it is a very subtle thing, and it should not come down to this level of debate, ever.
Okay, Curtis, thank you for your time.
This speaks to the dysfunction of our board and why we need to talk about bylaws revision right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
If I could comment, we're not authorizing Black History Month. We're authorizing a document to go out.
The resolution says
authorizing Black.
It says
Change authorized to approves of the statement.
Yeah, it's just it's populism. But go ahead. Next, Domingo.
Populism. Come on, Eleazar. Why
Yes,
you say every
Curtis.
time I say something, you call me a populist? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think and I agree with the sentiment of Curtis, right? I think it's like we have to think outside the box, yeah. Like it's 2021. What I would propose is instead of again, right, going back to the dysfunctionability of the board, right, which is there should be an acknowledgement, right? You want to create committees, right, that brings up these types of situations a month prior to, right? And I think Wayne Benjamin sent such a dope when work is intentional, it looks intentional, right? The way that some emails were sent out with the different pictures and the different acknowledgments of certain historical individuals and change makers, right? I just think it's important to think about, yes, this might be a quick fix, but further down the line, thinking about developing, let's say, using this as an opportunity to engage people in the board. Like, hey, does anybody want to participate in the acknowledgement committee? Stuff like that. Because we can't just keep talking like.
Yeah, got it. Appreciate that, Tanya, and then wrap it up, closing remarks before we move.
Yeah, I first of all, I want to second everything that Curtis said. It's offensive to me. People don't get to authorize acknowledging of Black History Month. That is not for anybody to authorize or regulate. And second, I also feel that when we put out these statements, whether it's Women's History Month or Dominican Heritage or Hispanic Heritage, that the people that are represented by that day should lead that. Meaning that not to say that other people couldn't contribute, because everybody else contributes so many wonderful things to this Black History Month statement. So we're not saying they can't contribute. What I'm saying is the people that lead that in the front should be the people represented by that. So having a committee speaking for me as a Black woman about Black History Month, no, I'm not having that. I'm not having someone else articulate for me what I want to say about my heritage, my history. So I think that we don't need another committee to do that. What we need to do is just allow people who represented by those particular identities and to be able to take the initiative. We just need a timetable, a system in place that says those things are due by a certain date for review by the executive committee and by whatever. But we cannot hold up things to the end of the month and tell people we need to authorize them being able to acknowledge their own existence. That's ridiculous. I will not be voting for this. It is ridiculous.
So
I have a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, because we need to either pass
right.
it or no, whatever. We need
now,
to.
The point is, everyone has consistently now totally been misquoting the words of the resolution. It does not say authorize Black History Month. It never did, and it doesn't. It says endorse. Authorize is not.
I don't need your endorsement. I don't need your endorsement.
Excuse me, I have the floor now.
That's
okay. So we have to talk about the words that are actually there. Okay, and the fact that we're talking about words that are not there is at the very least erroneous, and even worse than that, it's reprehensible.
All right.
Now,
so
the board has to approve of anything that goes out unless there's a blanket approval. So in this one case, we can make this resolution much nicer, but we actually have to approve this resolution. And we have to do it in a way, ideally, that Tanya and Curtis and all of us, or all of you, since I'm not on the executive committee, can vote for it, because we as a board, we as a committee are endorsing with our whole heart Black History Month, but technically we can't do it unless we pass this resolution. So let's make the resolution just exactly the way it is, so that Curtis can support it and Tanya can support it. If there's an offensive word, we'll fix the word. And in the future, because we're going to include Liz's amendment, we will not have to go through this again. But technically, that's what the process requires. So if you don't like endorse, change it to a better word, like celebrate, and then change the celebrate somewhere else, another word. Yeah. But again, that's the technicality.
Point of personal privilege. Can somebody please re-enable screen share so that I can share this amended reso that captures some of these changes that people have been suggesting, like
Sure.
removing authorize?
Kathy, while that happens, you had a comment to make?
Yeah, because I think the heart of the matter with this reso is about the lack of, and I wouldn't say the bylaws, right? It's about office protocols, external communicating, our communication protocols, and the lack of that. So I'm wondering, and for me, that's like the heart of what the point of this, what the Be Resolved should be about. And if we strike, and I know Liz is gonna share the language that she suggested, if we actually strike the last Be Resolved and have it reflect that this resolution, that this appended statement, well, share your screen, Liz, because I'm like, I don't even remember the language at this point. But my point is striking that language to reflect that this is a resolution that we have a statement and that we want to create a resolution that will adopt, that will shift that protocol so that for future statements. Is what I'm trying to say.
I think
Sorry
we
that I
want
didn't
to
get it
be,
right.
yeah. You got it now, Liz, before we move
Yeah.
on, close it? All right. What we want is a very inclusive resolution. We want to celebrate all cultures. I don't think anyone, like Debbie said and Omar said in the beginning, we don't want to create these dysfunctionalities and all these, like there's a hidden agenda or someone has anything against anybody. I don't think anyone has that intent. Who's gonna
Can you
spend
see
3
that?
hours? Yeah, who's gonna spend 3 hours of their
Eleazar,
time?
I appreciate
And
you.
let me, can I finish? Because I think to be
But
chairing the meeting, I'm chairing the meeting. So if you want to talk, I'll allow you to speak. Just don't do that, because you just don't mess with the dynamics. If you want to speak, fine. Go ahead, take a minute and speak.
okay,
Liz?
what I wanted to say is, are you allowing me to speak now?
According to the rules, that's how it goes. Yes.
Okay, all right. So what I'm saying is that when two Black people on this call are telling you that this is not okay, it's not okay to go behind them and say, well, it's okay because we said so. This is not, we said no.
Okay.
And our voices are the ones that matter here. I'm sorry. It'll be like me telling you how to think about what you would write about Hispanic History Month or heritage or women, if I was a man, to tell them what to say about that. It's crazy. Like, this is what is happening. Like, this is like we just said, this is not okay. And that I'm looking for, we could create standing rules, but there needs to be a timelines and things like that. We don't need a resolution authorizing. Well, I'll take what Jim said, which was the word, not to use that word, but we can't just do that. Like, we have to be able to craft these statements in advance so that these statements are ready to go out.
Thank you for your comments. Liz, if you want to read off of it.
That's important.
So I really appreciate what Tanya said about standing rules. So this is still called, the name of the resolution stays the same. The first whereas stays the same. The second whereas is changed a little bit so that it's very clear that we're not authorizing Black History Month, which exists, but says whereas Community Board 12 Manhattan wishes to issue the appended statement, wishes to issue the appended statement in celebration of Black History Month. And then we add another whereas that speaks to other types of, can you all read this? Can you see this? Is it large enough?
Yeah, I think we can all read it.
Okay, so then there's another whereas, and it's not meant to be an exhaustive list, but it is a partial list and includes et cetera, which is fitting to endorse with an appropriate statement. Resolved, Community Board 12 Manhattan endorses a new standing rule to issue statements such as the appended in celebration of Black History Month for this and other such civic occasions. And be it further resolved, the Community Board 12 Manhattan authorizes the chair in collaboration with the executive committee and led by those most vested in the celebration itself to issue from time to time similar such statements to celebrate such civil observations. And that way, you know, if we have veterans, they can take the lead on the Veterans Day statement. If we have, you know, women or Dominicans or queer folk, they can take the lead on Hispanic heritage, Dominican history, Pride Month, what have you. Does that help to? Because if Curtis, I will say that even though these were my my suggested amendments, if Curtis and Tanya are not okay with the language that formulates this, then I'm a pretty shitty ally in voting for it. So I'm not going to vote for it either.
Are we going to call the meeting to adjourn?
Well, no. I mean, does this revised language work for folks?
Catherine, you had a comment to make?
I did, but there were hands before me.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see them.
So Steve and Debbie, and then
Oh, Steve and Debbie,
questions.
floor is yours.
The second whereas should not say that we wish to issue the appended statement. It's already been issued.
That's true.
We should say, we should acknowledge the fact and make it a clear statement that Community Board 12 has issued the appended statement in celebration of Black History Month. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Excellent.
And you should delete the word with at the end of the sentence. And at the very end, in the last resolved, civil observations is a strange phrase. It's okay, I think, to go ahead and repeat civic occasions or you know, events or something.
Ah, the last resolved. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's civic, not civil.
Oh, my bad. Thank you. That's a typo.
And in the resolved in front of that, such as the one, add the word one before appended.
Wait, I'm sorry. Which one? Oh, yeah, such as the, gotcha.
Yeah. So I think that what this does is it doesn't confuse whether or not we had the right to issue this statement for Black History Month. What it does do is establish a procedure by which we can more logically issue them in the future.
Right.
It uses Black History Month as a precedent that we can build on.
Right, not necessarily, you know, Black History Month itself. So I'm sure that we have any other comments. I can't see them. Liz, can you not share the?
Yeah.
Please, so that I can.
Debbie, your hand up.
Debbie, hand is on, and then we can roll call it or vote on it or not vote on it.
I don't like the people that have the most vested in it. Like, I mean, this statements like this, you know, will often, I would hope, be able to be sorted by the chair and the district manager, etc. Sometimes they will need, so maybe if it could be something like in consultation as needed and appropriate with the executive committee. I mean, I won't vote on this if, like, I'm on the executive committee. I am not going to vote on it if this particular one doesn't pass muster with Tanya and Curtis in this instance. But as a matter of going forward, this idea that only this person can draft or that kind of draft, to me, that's a separate issue. And I don't think it should be here. I think we're talking about a process going forward to send out this kind of thing, which I think we're all very eager and supportive of. And I think under normal course, hopefully this doesn't, I hate writing by committee. Hopefully it can go out without all of us being involved, but obviously, and on case each time that there's something, there might be somebody that has particularly insight or knowledge, or they should definitely get the raise, nod their head, but it's not like drafting it shouldn't be assigned to this person. Like, we all have jobs to do. I don't necessarily, we all on our committees try to take turns with people drafting resolutions and stuff like that. So I don't, again, I think in these cases, we need to make sure that it's by people that have a better eye to it, or the appropriate eye to it, to make sure that it's the right thing. But I don't think we should bind to any particular process on how we're sending out these kind of celebratory things.
I agree with you, Debbie, 100%.
Okay, guys, so we can either not vote on it or abstain, or whichever way you guys feel more comfortable doing. As long as we have a process that we explore, we can move forward.
Can I ask a
I have a
question?
hand.
Who had a hand?
Sorry, I had a hand before Liz, and then if you're cool with it, because I feel really confused at this point. Because what I was trying to highlight earlier, and if it didn't come out right, it didn't come out right, was that for me, the resolution, similarly to what happened, I think when we voted for Rosie, right, was highlighting that we have a lack of protocol. And in creating a resolution for to highlight that, right, is one thing, and to have it be like also an acknowledgement is another. So that's why when I'm looking, when it was on the screen, I'm like, I feel like every single paragraph has shifted. And so for me, I'm understanding that I'm voting for at least for me, I would vote for moving forward as a board. We are allowed to via email co-create acknowledgements or any other email, and it can be sent by the chair and the district manager, right? And so that's how I understand. We had this experience this month. We need to formalize that. So for me, I'm like, the title has to change. The first two paragraphs have to change similarly to how we did it before, of like, this happened, we don't have a rule for that, and we're creating a standing rule. This is what I'm understanding. If I'm off, I would like some clarification.
Liz, before we close it out.
I have one comment on that. The committees cannot meet and do things like even compose things by email. That violates the open meetings law. However, and this is sort of a cop-out, but it's perfectly, and again, I think a lot has to do with good faith, and I think we are all, as part of this process, in good faith. A group, not the executive committee, could, well, again, according to the resolution, it is the executive committee that will craft these various, letters, statements in honor of these various celebratory occasions for the most part. Now, a group of board members unofficially can draft something and say, here, executive committee, we would like you to consider this, or, so that way you can have the informal email process, but technically it then goes to the executive committee, because at some point, as the executive discusses, in fact, there will be a public process on this new document. So that's my only caveat, but I think that's a wonderful suggestion.
Liz, you had something else before we move on? It's 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I agree with what Kathy said. We essentially, we have really changed the resolution to be about how we move forward. I think it probably makes sense to call it a celebration of civil observations, and we take the first two whereases and put them together as one. So, whereas February is Black History Month, and we've issued the appended statement in celebration of that, and whereas there are going to be all kinds of times when we're going to want to do this again, therefore be it resolved that we endorse a standing rule to approve that statement and similar statements like that going forward for other occasions, and that we authorize the chair and the executive committee and et cetera, to write those statements. And that way we don't have to find ourselves here in this space. And it not only resolves the parliamentary issue that James has identified as a problem. But more importantly, it keeps us from having to do this every time we want to go, hey, it's something important.
Yeah, share screen it again, the way that you just updated it. With the
Sure.
new changes, please. Thank you.
Oh, please don't say civil observations.
Well, if you want, I mean, you know, I'm open.
They're civic occasions.
Okay, that's fine.
Holidays?
Well, they're not technically holidays.
Oh.
Such a beautiful thing to see the board working together.
You have to, brother.
Absolutely.
Tanya, is there any chance you can see if you can get Curtis back?
Curtis has left this meeting.
I know. So this is now no longer, you know, because I mean, I certainly take your point about it being a little of, we should, I mean, yeah, you know, Black History Month exists and it's not up to us to question that because it exists. So, you know, I've taken out approved and endorsed and it's more about taking your idea of having a standing rule and Kathy's idea so that we have a process going forward.
So as a
Are you asking my opinion?
Yes,
Are you asking my opinion?
Okay, let's.
yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay. My opinion is it's the principle, which is why I'm the only Black person left in this meeting right now, and I'm about to leave. Okay, so what I'm saying here is that it's the principle of how this is being done. And I think that people need to open up their eyes and see what's happening. And I think that is why we need to have these retreats and we need to learn a little bit because we do need a standing rule. We need a standing rule, but this is not how you go about it. By coming up with a resolution without consulting with us, by making these decisions behind our back, presenting it in this manner, it's not okay. And personally, Liz, you're a wonderful writer. I mean, I not judging that. You can put words together in an instant that makes sense. It's not about that. It is the principle. And it's also their issues. It still says which is fitting to endorse. Who's fitting? Who's deciding what's fitting? And also, and that's the second whereas in the last sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last resolve is saying authorize the chair in collaboration with the executive committee. My issue with that, and I'm going to be very clear, is what happened when we were crafting this statement. That at the 11th hour, after the board worked so beautifully together and came up with some wonderful stuff, that at the 11th hour, a stake was attempted to be put through this. So the trust for me is like if I'm authorizing someone to now that can have authority to stop something, that it was traumatic for me as a Black person to go through that, to experience that. And I still see it here. And I think there needs to be another way than that. There's someone that can come in at the 11th hour and put a stake through something for whatever reasons. And again, I'm not here for all of the marshmallows and stuff. This is what it is. That's what happened. I'm not making that up to make up assertions about what I think happened. That's I'm not making judgments. That's what happened. And that was not okay.
All right.
And this doesn't correct that at all.
All righty. We understand. We got it. Thank you. So we just vote. We just have the capability of just moving it along or not. I mean, that's it. That's how the process works. As long as we have a process.
I call a question.
Yeah, Isidro.
I call a question.
Oh, I didn't hear.
I think we were about ready to vote, so I don't think there were additional questions, so I don't think we need to call the question. I think we were just voting.
But nobody has seconded this.
Oh, well, in that case, we can't vote on it if nobody seconds it. I ain't seconding it.
Create a standing rule the
adjourn.
correct way with the appropriate input.
So you can unshare it, Liz?
Yeah, sorry.
I motion to adjourn.
There's a motion on the floor. Oh, no, you can't motion to. I have Natalie Spinner to say a few words, and then we can do whatever we're gonna do with that resolution. Natalie?
I'm mute. Okay. All right. Community Board 12, good evening. I will not take up much of your time.
Thank you.
We're handling a lot of business here, but just as a minor housekeeping question, whatever process you guys have as a board for managing membership issues like leaves and resignations, that is entirely up to you. However, there is only one official roster of membership of Community Board 12, and that is the one in the Borough President's office who appoints them. So until such time as that written resignation gets to our office, that person is still a member of the board, and we cannot replace them, which is a problem for having quorum and all that. And you want to have a full board of 50 people whenever possible. And then the other thing is that people who are still officially members are still subject to public officer law. So you don't want to ever create a situation in which someone thinks that they're free of the obligation of public officer law and acting that way. You know, in the case of Juan Guzman, what he told us was that he wasn't reapplying. So what that meant is that for us, he was going to stay on till April. That's not what he communicated to you. So as soon as you get any communication to that effect, we, you know, as a courtesy, we don't make people write resignation letters over again addressed to the borough president who appointed them. We're happy to take a forward that was sent to you. But you want to make sure that that roster is, which is live updated, is accurate. And I will tell you that on more than one occasion, I have had to flag people publicly claiming to be members of boards when they are not. So that is another reason why we need to have those records be accurate and up to date. Thank you so much for your help.
Thank you, Natalie, for the clarification of the clarification of the clarification. So just a quick comments, Debbie and Omar. Thank you for being the, I guess, the adults in the room. I know that is a difficult process. I know that is a hard conversation to have. I know that I've been called a tribe. I've been called people trying to elevate their names, trying to get a vote. It's been saying a bunch of shit about me, that I dislike women, that I dislike races, that I've been said a lot of things, and they come to my ear. But I try to go through this and walk through it and make sure that we elevate ourselves instead of decimate ourselves, which is what happens a lot of times. So thank you guys for all the hard work. I guess this resolution, no one is going to second it. So call the meeting to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a great night.